Dreams, to the medieval mind, were not just nighttime nonsense spun by an idle brain. They were messages, warnings, temptations. Sometimes jokes from saints with a mean sense of timing. The average villager in Elderlin wouldn't say, "I had a weird dream last night," so much as, "A shadow walked across my sleep and left muddy footprints." It was understood that dreams meant something, even if that something made no earthly sense. Especially then, the stranger the dream, the more likely it had been sent by something important or something that had been watching when it shouldn't have. If you're coming back, or you're watching my video for the first time, welcome. I want to ask you, where are you listening from and what time it is for you? Subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. Now let's get comfortable and continue our journey about dreams. Marta, of course, kept a dream book. Not a tidy ledger, but a swollen stack of stitched-together parchment, full of ink blotches and pressed herbs and the occasional dead moth. She'd jot down villagers' dreams in her crabbed script, frowning the whole time like the dream had personally insulted her. Once, Brina dreamed she gave birth to a turnip that shouted tax advice. Marta simply nodded and muttered, "Omen of misplaced trust." Another time, Osric dreamed he was climbing a staircase made of bread. She didn't even write that one down, just gave him a biscuit and told him to stay away from the miller for a fortnight. In the chapel, long since retired from anything resembling official doctrine, someone had nailed up a list of common dream symbols: wheat, prosperity; dogs, loyalty or betrayal, depending on whether they bit; teeth falling out, fear of judgment, or possibly just bad apples. The list changed regularly, though no one admitted updating it. New entries would appear overnight: screaming goats =, hidden envy; fish in your shoes =, divine direction; floating above the village, while on fire =, unresolved pride. It was easier in Elderlin to believe dreams had meaning than to believe your own mind might be doing whatever it liked. Sindra claimed she could walk into dreams, said it casually one afternoon while weeding her garden. I asked if that meant she could control them. "No," she said. "I just visit. Sometimes I'm invited." I asked what happened if she wasn't. She just smiled and said, "Then I bring honey." I'm not sure if that was metaphor or a recipe. She once gave Tam a small charm to wear while sleeping. A smooth stone tied with red string, said it would keep the louder dreams out. When I asked what she meant by louder, she said, "You'll know if you hear one. I've slept a little lighter ever since." Elderlin lies in that peculiar stillness where the air seems to hold its own breath. This is when people remember what they saw in the dark, half in words, half in feelings. Marta says it's the only honest time to speak of dreams, when you haven't yet dressed them up in logic or stuffed them into a drawer labeled nonsense. The early morning confessions at her door say as much. Dreams about dead relatives giving recipes. Dreams about flying pigs demanding taxes. Dreams that taste like salt. Tharn the blacksmith once dreamed his anvil grew legs and walked away, muttering about misuse and disrespect. He told me this in passing, like it was a weather report. Said he woke up and found his hammer on the roof. No one asked how it got there. In Elderlin, dreams sometimes reached out into the waking world not to prove a point, but simply to remind everyone who was really in charge. You could ignore a dream, sure, but you did so at your own risk. Best to leave a bowl of milk on the windowsill. Best to say thank you, even if you didn't know who to thank. There was a boy once, Arlen I think, who dreamed of a door where no door should be, just a plain wooden thing in the middle of a field, standing upright, closed. In the dream he never opened it. He just stood there, night after night, staring. One day the door appeared in the waking world, exactly where it had been in the dream. The hinges creaked like they remembered something painful. Arlen never went near it again. The village didn't touch it either. It's still out there, weathered and quiet, a reminder that not all dreams vanish at sunrise. Some prefer to stick around and see how you behave. Not every dream was ominous. Some were gifts. Warm fields and loved faces long gone, songs you'd forgotten, notes falling like rain. Net told me once he dreamed of being a tree rooted and tall, and when he woke, his back hurt but his heart felt quieter. Said he hadn't felt that kind of stillness in years. No one mocked him. Dreams were allowed to be strange in Elderlin, sacred even. And like all sacred things, they were approached with curiosity and caution, never certainty. You didn't laugh at someone's dream here. You listened. You nodded. You let the silence afterwards mean what it needed to mean. The tavern had its own relationship with dreams. The Loud Wren's back room was rumored to hold more than just barrels and forgotten coats. Bran insisted he'd once fallen asleep there after a particularly long evening, and dreamed the entire tavern stood on a ship, sailing through a sea of ink. When he woke, his boots were damp, and his coat smelled faintly of salt. Lissa just raised an eyebrow when he told her. Next time, she said, take a lantern. Whether she meant in the dream or the cellar was unclear. Around here, both would have been sensible advice. Over mugs and meals, people shared their dreams like weather reports. Some bizarre, some benign. Fen once dreamed he built a machine that could record dreams and play them back through bird whistles. Woke up with a half-finished contraption and no memory of starting it. It made a noise like a worried duck and exploded gently after 3 days. He buried it with ceremony and now wears a glove stitched with symbols to keep his dreams from building without permission. Not that it always works. The other night, I saw something crawling out of his workshop window with a key in its mouth. It nodded at me. I nodded back. The church, such as it was, held a different view. The old priest, long gone now, buried with 3 candles and a bell, used to say that dreams were the soul's letters to heaven, usually intercepted. There are messengers, he'd whisper, and there are eavesdroppers. He once held a service for a woman who dreamed her child had wings and refused to come down from the rafters. When she woke, the cradle was full of feathers. Nothing else. The priest declared it a visitation. Marta called it indigestion. The feathers smelled like cloves. I kept one, just in case. People came to Elderlin with their dreams, hoping they'd find meaning here. Sometimes they did. More often they left with stranger questions and a strong cup of nettle tea. You didn't come here for certainty. You came for the feeling that someone was still paying attention, that dreams, however strange or sharp, might be held gently and taken seriously, not solved. Just heard. That was enough. That's always been enough. In the quieter stretches of Elderlin, where the houses give way to hedges and the air feels less obligated to carry news, dreams carry a different weight. People here wake slowly, not just from sleep but from the places they've traveled in their minds. You can see it in their eyes, still half-latched, still trying to blink out the echoes. Morning here is soft and deliberate, full of kettle whistles and the sound of hands scrubbing away sleep at the edge of wash basins. No one talks much until after second breakfast. Not out of grumpiness, just reverence. Because dreams aren't things to rush through, they're to be unpacked carefully like letters written in a language that rearranges itself if you read too fast. Old Branwen says dreams are where the soul goes to air itself out. She says this while pounding dough like it insulted her ancestors, and she means it. Every now and then she'll pull a scone from the oven and declare it prophetic with no further context. Once she handed me one and said, "This one's about you." I ate it with appropriate anxiety. It tasted like cinnamon and deeply repressed emotions. A week later I found an old journal under my bed that wasn't mine. Inside were sketches of the village from angles I'd never stood in. I showed it to Branwen. She sniffed and said, "See? Scone never lies." Marta has a theory that dreams are stitched from threads we leave loose during the day. Unfinished thoughts, half-spoken regrets, moments we looked away from too quickly. She says when you dream, your mind tries to tie them into something wearable. Sometimes you get a robe of insight, sometimes you get a sock that screams. Either way, you wake up with something you didn't have before. That's the point. Marta records her own dreams in a red book that smells like sage and something darker. She reads it only on full moons and market days. I asked if I could look once. She handed me the index. It read like a table of contents for an unsettling but well-written play. The children of Elderlin have their own dream customs, passed among them in whispers and dares. If you wake from a nightmare and can still taste blood, you have to bury a stone under your pillow. If you dream of a tree talking, you must leave it an apple the next day, even if you don't know which tree it was. And if you see another villager in your dream, you're meant to greet them differently the next morning. One hand over your heart, one behind your back. No one remembers why. They just do it. It's not superstition. Exactly. It's etiquette. And the trees, curiously, are never hungry for long. There's a woman named Elson who lives on the edge of the village in a house that smells like dried mint and old secrets. She claims she can taste dreams if you bring her the right kind of tea. She once drank a cup of valerian and declared she'd seen a castle made of glass perched on a whale's back. Said the guards wore masks of fog and the queen had no shadow. I asked her what it meant. She frowned, tapped her teacup 3 times and said, "It means someone nearby is lying to themselves very convincingly. I've never been able to drink valerian since." Elson keeps a dream catcher of sorts above her doorway. Not one of those decorative webs you'd see in a market stall, but a frame strung with knotted threads and tiny bones, feathers from birds that don't nest in this part of the world. She never explains where she got it, but sometimes when the wind blows just right, it hums. People say if you stand beneath it long enough, it'll show you the dream you were supposed to have, not the one you got, but the one that got misplaced. The idea's unsettling. Most folks have enough trouble with the dreams they already remember. Even Osric, ever the skeptic, has begun keeping a dream journal. He insists it's just to track his sleep for civic readiness. But the pages are tucked neatly into a leather folio, and I've seen him frown at it like he's trying to decipher a map that keeps changing. He mentioned once a recurring image, a tower of mirrors in a field of ash, always just far enough away to remain unreachable. I asked if he'd tried walking toward it in the dream. He said he did, once, and woke with blisters on his heels. I haven't pressed the matter since. Some metaphors fight back. There's been a spate of shared dreams in Elderlin lately, quietly spoken, never too directly. People seeing the same silver door, the same pool of still water, the same sound of bells in fog. No one's called it a problem yet, but the more it happens, the more people pause when they pass each other in the lanes. Just a breath longer than needed, just enough to ask, without asking, if the others saw what they saw. Net says it might be the land dreaming through us, or that something else is borrowing the same thread. Marta says we've probably all been drinking from the same barrel of questionable cider. Frankly, she might be right. There's also the issue of dreams that remember you, ones that don't fade when you wake, that wait for you the next night and the night after that, not nightmares. Those eventually tire themselves out. I'm talking about the dreams that treat you like a regular customer, the kind that develop continuity, stories with sequels, a hallway you've walked through before, a voice you recognize, a door you still haven't opened. Fen swears he's been building a city in his dreams, one brick at a time, and that the people there wave when they see him. They know him now. He sounds proud. He also looks exhausted. In the spring, the birds bring strange dreams with their return. That's just accepted here. Their calls stitch something into the edges of sleep, fragments mostly, but potent. You'll dream of flying, yes, but also of falling slowly, gently, like a leaf turning over and over through a sky that doesn't want you back. You'll hear your own name spoken in a way you've never heard before. And when you wake, you'll feel that old ache behind the ribs, the one that says you've forgotten something important, something that maybe never belonged to you in the first place. Not all dreams are for the dreamer. Some are passed along like letters delivered to the wrong address. I once dreamed of a woman I've never met sitting on the edge of a cliff, holding a bundle wrapped in black silk. She looked up at me and said, very clearly, "Tell Braina the answer is under the roots." I did, the next day. Braina went very still, left the room and didn't speak to me for 3 days. When she finally did, she gave me a slice of honey cake and said, "Next time don't listen so closely, fair enough." And so dreams continue in Elderlin, not just as visions but as a kind of shared weather, unpredictable, meaningful, and mostly tolerated with a resigned sort of grace. They bleed into the walls and the trees, and the songs hummed absently while sweeping doorsteps. Everyone here carries a dream or two still clinging to their coat sleeves. You can see it if you know how to look, in the tilt of a smile, the catch in a breath, the way someone hesitates just before opening a gate, as if something might be waiting on the other side. Not real, exactly, but not quite not. There's a room above the loud wren that nobody stays in twice. It's not locked, not cursed in the dramatic sense, and the bed doesn't scream or burst into flames, though the mattress does sag like it once knew disappointment. Personally, it's room 7. Plain door, creaky floorboards, a window that opens just wide enough to tempt bad decisions. Travelers who sleep there tend to leave a little quieter than they arrived, not frightened, just thoughtful. One merchant left behind a drawing of a mountain that no one recognized, with stars circling the peak like a crown. Another scribbled a half-rhyme on the wall and underlined the word "remember" 3 times. Lissa repaints it once a year. It always fades faster than the others. Net once stayed there during a particularly bad winter, when his own roof gave up and decided to let the snow in. He said the room dreamed for him, said he woke up with a memory of his mother's voice, even though he never knew her. That night, he heard someone humming under the floorboards, slow, sweet, and oddly familiar. He didn't investigate, just listened. He said it felt like being remembered by something that had no business remembering him. The next day he patched his roof with twice the care and has never mentioned room 7 again. But I noticed he always glances at its window when he walks by. There's a theory, whispered, mostly by the candlemakers and the lonely, that dreams are the currency of the unseen. Not payment, exactly, more like a form of barter. You offer them each night, unknowingly, and in return you get some kind of spiritual maintenance, emotional housekeeping, or, if you're unlucky, a reckoning. Sindra says this is why some people wake up tired. Not all dreams are fair trades, she told me once, handing me a candle that smelled like cloves and river stones. Some nights you give more than you get. I asked how to make the trade even. She shrugged. Stay interesting. Marta, who has no time for nonsense but is deeply invested in practical magic, makes dream pillows, small ones, sewn with worn thread and stuffed with dried herbs, mugwort, lavender, a few petals from a flower she refuses to name. People tuck them under their heads when sleep feels sharp-edged. They don't guarantee peaceful dreams, but they seem to soften the landings. Tharn sleeps with one now, though he insists it's just because it keeps the neck stiffness away. I've seen him touch it before bed, gently, like a charm. He dreams of fire sometimes, not nightmares, just fire. He never says what it burns. The village has a dream wall. Not official, not signed, but everyone knows it. A stretch of the old chapel's north side where people scratch symbols, notes, fragments. They fade quickly, the stone drinking them like morning fog, but for a little while they linger just long enough for others to see. There are no rules, just impulse. A feather shape, a name, a phrase like "I saw her again, she was laughing this time." Once someone carved a perfect circle and left a coin pressed into the center. It stayed for 3 days. On the 4th, it was gone. The circle, however, remained. Children naturally believe the wall is magic. They bring chalk, berries, bits of charcoal and take turns scribbling their dreams. One girl wrote that she dreamed of riding a horse made of moonlight across a bridge made of music. 2 days later, someone left her a tiny carved horse on her windowsill. No one saw who, no one claimed it. When asked, She simply nodded and said, I thought it would come. That's the thing about Elderlin. You don't get your dreams answered. But sometimes, if they're honest enough, someone listens. And sometimes, that's enough to make the air around you feel different. I've dreamed of Elderlin itself, more than once. Not just in the sense of remembering places I've walked, or faces I've passed, but of the village as a thing that breathes. In the dream, the chimneys are mouths, the windows are eyes, the trees bend to whisper to the roofs, and the paths curl like fingers. It's not frightening, it's intimate, like being inside a living memory. When I wake, there's always dirt on my hands, just a little. I don't tell anyone, not because they wouldn't believe me, but because they might. And that somehow feels more dangerous. Dreams are stitched into Elderlin the way ivy climbs a wall, slow, inevitable, occasionally invasive. You find remnants everywhere. A glove hanging from a tree branch that no one claims. A kettle left at the base of the windmill, still warm though no fire burns. A song hummed by 3 different people on the same day, none of whom remember where they heard it. These are not accidents. Or if they are, they're the kind Elderlin encourages. Accidents with teeth. Accidents that remember. Most places forget dreams. Elderlin collects them like rain in a barrel. Elson once told me the trick to understanding dreams isn't to analyze them, it's to treat them like guests. You ask them why they've come, she said, and then you feed them something sweet, something bitter, and something warm. If they're still sitting there after that, you ask what they want. I asked what happens if they don't leave. She looked at me, very gently, and said, then they're not dreams anymore. I didn't ask her what they become. Some doors don't need opening. Some are already halfway through. Every year, at the turning of autumn, a few villagers gather outside the old watchtower to burn pieces of paper. Nothing dramatic. No ceremony. They just write down dreams they want to forget, or maybe ones they're afraid they'll remember too clearly, and feed them to a controlled flame. The smoke smells sharp and herbal, like regret set to music. No one speaks during the burning. You don't interrupt the leaving. That's the rule. Afterwards, they all go back to their homes a little lighter, though some carry a second slip of paper in their coat pocket, just in case forgetting doesn't work. Not all dreams are for night. Some sneak into your afternoon, your walks, your silences. You'll be tying your boots and suddenly remember what it felt like to fly. You'll look at a puddle and see your face, older, younger, or not your own. You'll hum a tune that never existed and be sure you knew the words once. And you'll stop. Just for a moment. Because something in the air feels like permission. In Elderlin, these are called waking echoes. Not hallucinations. Not tricks of the mind. Just dreams doing their due diligence, checking in during business hours. And so it goes. Night after night, the village closes its shutters, dims its lanterns, and turns inward. The people dream, and the dreams dream back. Not always kindly, not always clearly, but always with intent. Elderlin holds these dreams in its soil, its stones, its breath. They drift through the air like pollen. They settle, they root. And when morning comes, the village rises, not just rested but altered, ever so slightly by what passed through its collective sleep. That's the power of belief. That's the magic of a place that knows how to listen, even with its eyes closed. The villagers say dreams are most potent on nights when the moon is missing, when the sky forgets its silver coin and the world lies just a little emptier. On those nights, sleep doesn't arrive gently. It arrives like a stranger at your door with a parcel you didn't ask for, wrapped in twine and humming faintly. You open it, of course. You always do. That's the rule. And what you find inside might be a memory wearing someone else's face, or a field made of feathers, or a voice that speaks backwards but means well. Marda advises caution on moonless nights. She says it's when the dreaming world feels unsupervised. The last dark moon, Brina dreamed she was a tree. Not symbolically an actual tree. Roots in the ground, branches stretched toward a sun she couldn't feel. Birds nested in her. Insects carved messages into her bark. She said it was peaceful mostly. Until a storm came and she couldn't bend. Just had to wait it out. Every drop a hammer. When she woke, her limbs ached, and her mouth tasted like moss. She didn't speak for 2 days. Then she went and pruned every tree in her garden, humming under her breath. When asked why, she just said, "They were too proud." Shared dreaming becomes more common this time of year. Late autumn, when the wind learns how to whisper properly, and the leaves lose their grip on certainty. Families report waking with the same songs in their heads. Lovers dream in tandem, speaking full conversations that vanish by breakfast. Even the animals aren't exempt. Crimp barked at a mirror for a solid hour the other morning, and Elsith swears her hens started laying eggs in patterns. One with a spiral, one with what looked like a face. No one dared make an omelet. They were quietly buried near the old scarecrow, which felt like the appropriate level of dramatic response. The dream reader comes sometimes around this season. No one knows their name or where they stay. They don't knock or announce themselves. They're just suddenly there, wrapped in gray cloth, smelling faintly of juniper and something colder. They sit in the square with a bowl of water and ask nothing. If you have a dream worth telling, you sit across from them and speak. If not, you keep walking. The water never ripples, no matter the wind. When the telling is done, the dream reader places a pebble in the bowl, sometimes smooth, sometimes sharp. That's all. The pebbles vanish by morning. Sindra claims to have spoken to the dream reader once, though whether she means aloud or in sleep is unclear. She says they're not from here, not really from anywhere, but that they visit places where dreaming has become unruly. Not dangerous, just too loud, like a river swollen past its banks. They help the flow, she said, not by changing dreams, but by reminding them what direction they meant to go. I asked if that meant dreams forget. She nodded once. More than people do. That's why they come back strange. They get lost sometimes. Looping, echoing, looking for the wrong door. Elderlin has always had a complicated relationship with sleep. It's not mistrusted, but it's treated carefully. People here nap like they're borrowing time from someone they owe. They wake slow, blinking like cats, testing the air. No one jumps up from a nap in Elderlin. No one's that brave. Too many tales of people waking up in places they weren't before, physically or otherwise. Once, a boy named Pell fell asleep in the field and woke up speaking a dialect no one had heard in 3 generations. He forgot it 2 days later. But for a while, everything he said made the geese very agitated. Tharn once told me that sleep is a kind of death. We rehearse nightly. And dreams are the dress rehearsals for whatever comes next. He said it while sharpening a blade with the kind of focus that made you think the blade had offended him personally. I asked if he was afraid of what he saw in his sleep. Not afraid, he said, just impressed. Then he went back to his work and didn't speak again for the rest of the day. That night, he lit a second lantern outside his door and left a plate of bread on the windowsill. The next morning, the lantern was extinguished. The bread was gone. The knife was missing for 3 days. There's a room in the chapel tower no one uses. The stairs that lead to it groan like they remember better days, and the door at the top sticks like it's clinging to something. Inside, it's dusty, cramped, filled with broken hymnals and the ghost of incense. But on the wall is a mural, faint but unmistakable, of people sleeping under a great tree whose branches cradle stars. Some of the sleepers are smiling. Others look expectant, like they're waiting for someone to show up. No one remembers painting it. Marta swears it wasn't there 10 years ago. But every few months the colors seem a little brighter. No one questions it. The door remains closed mostly. On nights when the clouds hang low, and the village feels like a pocket folded in on itself, strange things whisper at the edges of windows. Nothing malevolent, just reminders, fragments. You'll hear your name said in your mother's voice. even if she's been gone for years. You'll catch the scent of a lost love's hair, or hear the exact sound of snow falling outside your childhood home. It's not nostalgia, it's not haunting, it's something else. As if the dreams you've cast off have returned to visit, wearing the familiar like a borrowed coat. They don't stay long, just long enough to remind you of who you've been. Sometimes, the dreams aren't even yours. This is something people in Elderland don't talk about directly, but everyone understands. You'll sleep and see someone else's memories, their fears, their joys, their quiet shame. You'll wake up knowing things you shouldn't. Once I dreamed of fishing in a red boat with a woman who smelled like fresh bread and loss. I told no one. Weeks later, Mara described the same woman to me, in a voice so quiet it barely existed. Said she used to dream of her too. Said she hadn't in years. We didn't speak about it again. Some dreams are meant to be held between people like a fragile truce. And still the village dreams on, softly, steadily, like a tide against an unseen shore. It doesn't matter whether the dreams are prophetic or foolish, divine or digestive. What matters is that they are honored, believed in, even if only a little, even if only in that half second before your mind clicks fully into waking. Elderlin is full of sleepers who know better than to dismiss a vision, who leave the window cracked just in case something wants to come in. And if it does, well, there's usually tea, and a pillow waiting, and someone nearby who's probably dreamed something stranger. There's an old superstition in Elderlin that says, if you speak your dream aloud before your second blink of the day, it becomes real. Not real in the stone and blood sense, but real enough to wander, to linger, to peek around corners and nestle in shadows. Children are taught early to blink twice before saying anything in the morning, and to blink a third time if the dream involved anyone they still have to see at breakfast. It's more ritual than rule, but you'd be surprised how quickly even the skeptical fall into it. Elderlin teaches you that dreams aren't delicate, they're contagious. Bran once told me she dreamt of a black river running through the village, silent, slow, and thick as ink. No boats, no fish, just a single floating book, closed and bound in twine. The next morning, she couldn't remember the name of her cousin, the one she'd known since childhood, who lived 2 doors down. It came back eventually, but the silence in between was long and odd. When she finally remembered it, she said it aloud 3 times and spat into the garden. Marta called it a reasonable response. Bran hasn't spoken of the river again, but she started sleeping with a pencil under her pillow, just in case. Fenn's been building a dream machine again. Says this one's different. Says it doesn't try to capture the dream. It just records the edges, the way it feels around the seams. He showed me a wire loop wrapped in feathers and copper. It buzzed gently in his hands, like a thing waiting to be remembered. When I asked what it did, he said it hums louder near people who've had unsettling dreams. He's been testing it near the market square, and apparently it sang itself hoarse near the fishmonger. I don't know whether to be intrigued or alarmed, possibly both. The device is currently named Harold. He insists the name came to him in a dream. Some dreams don't come during sleep. They arrive in waking stillness on long walks, in the spaces between thoughts, in the rhythm of peeling apples or sharpening a blade. Elderlin folk call these soft dreams. They're not visions, not quite. More like nudges, a sudden image, a taste of something you've never eaten, the urge to check under a floorboard you've never stepped on. Marta says soft dreams are the soul's way of getting your attention when your mind is too cluttered. Elson disagrees. She says they're echoes, leftovers, the bits someone else forgot to claim. Either way, when one arrives, you pay attention. There's a boy named Orlin who hasn't dreamed in over a year. Not once. His sleep is long and quiet, and utterly blank. People don't talk about it much, but they watch him a little closer than others. He seems fine, healthy, cheerful, even. But sometimes he pauses in the middle of speaking, like he's trying to remember a tune that never existed. Elsith gave him a charm to wear. Net gave him a book of blank pages. Fen gave him Harold briefly, to see if the machine would hum. It didn't. Not even a twitch. That scared Fen more than he expected. Harold now lives in the root cellar, and no one talks about it. Every few seasons, the village hosts what they call a dream fire. It's not a real fire. Not exactly. More of a gathering. People write down dreams they can't explain or forget, fold them into tiny squares and place them into a lantern made of thin birch paper. The lanterns are floated down the river after dusk, lit by a single candle. Most drift quietly, some fizzle. A few burn bright and vanish in a pop that smells of rosewater and regret. If a lantern returns to shore, it's considered unfinished business. Those are left under the hawthorn tree at Latch Hill and dealt with only by moonlight. Some villagers keep dream bottles, small glass flasks filled with things that are said to catch a specific kind of dream: lavender for sweetness, river pebbles for continuity, salt for protection. A thread of red wool tied around the neck keeps the contents stable. You shake it gently before sleep, whisper a name, any name, though it's best if it's one you miss, and place it near the bed. Not too close. Not on the floor. The bottles fog up. If the dream catches, you don't open them. Not ever. You let the dream settle, let it cool, and bury the bottle at the edge of your property when you're ready to let go. Dream theft is a very quiet crime in Elderlin. Not common, but not impossible. Net swears he lost a dream once, mid-sleep, like someone slipped a hand into his mind and took it out the way you'd remove a pie from a windowsill. He woke with the feeling of something unfinished, not painful, just incomplete. Marta says it happens when people stop respecting the border between thought and desire. You want too much, you ask too loudly, and something else answers. The thief leaves no mark, only absence. Net started sleeping with a string of iron keys under his pillow after that. Not sure if it helps, but he says it makes him feel polite. Not all dreams are born from within. There are dream winds, they say. Currents that drift through places where belief is strong and boundaries thin. If you sleep with your window open on certain nights, you might catch one. Your dream will feel strange, bigger, filled with places you've never been, and languages you don't speak. Some wake in tears, some wake laughing, some wake with nothing but the sound of their name said 3 times in a tone they'll never forget. The wind carries stories looking for homes. Elderlin is full of open windows, which may be why the village dreams louder than it ought to. One woman, whose name I won't say out of respect, dreamed her death every night for a year, not dramatically. Just a simple image. Her sitting in her favorite chair, eyes closed, tea gone cold beside her. Every detail the same. At first she feared it, then she prepared for it. Then she came to expect it. One morning she didn't come to market. They found her in that chair, the tea still warm. People said it was peaceful. Morda said it was intentional. Not all dreams are warnings. Some are invitations. She left a note with only one word: ready. The line between dream and memory has always been thin in Elderlin. You'll find people reminiscing about things that never happened, stories passed down that no one lived, emotions attached to shadows. No one questions this. If a dream leaves you with the weight of experience, who's to say it didn't happen? If you wake with a scar and no wound, a truth and no proof, what's the difference? The village holds these dreams gently, like heirlooms. They're stored not in boxes but in glances, gestures, the way someone stirs their tea twice to the left, a kind of code, a quiet agreement. And so, as the lanterns flicker and shutters creak against the night, the villagers of Elderlin slip into sleep with their charms, their rituals, their hopes folded like linen beneath their heads. They dream as they have always dreamed, deeply, cautiously, and with the full knowledge that the dream world is not a mirror, but a door, one that does not always open inward. They step through anyway, because that's what you do when the wind shifts and the stars blink in unfamiliar patterns. You close your eyes, You listen for your name, and you see who's waiting on the other side. They say the deeper you sleep, the older the dream. Shallow dreams skim the surface, tame things shaped like memories, worries, passing thoughts wearing masks. But the ones that live in the deep, down where time forgets to tick, those are the dreams that carry dust older than your bones. In Elderlin, people measure the depth of a night by what they feel in their ribs come morning. If you wake with an ache behind the heart, and the sense that someone said your name in a voice not heard in years, you've slept too close to the old roots. Morda calls them root dreams. She keeps salt by her bed just in case one follows her home. Branwen once woke from a root dream and didn't speak for 3 days, just sat on her porch, peeling apples and staring like she'd seen the end of a very long road and wasn't impressed by what was waiting. When she did speak, she said, "The dream didn't speak in words, but I understood it just fine." Then she tossed an apple peel into the fire, watched it curl like a question mark, and muttered something about closing all the cellar doors, even the ones that weren't there yesterday. The next morning, half the village had new locks. The other half quietly built second doors. There's a path outside Elderland that leads nowhere in particular, a deer trail, half overgrown, the kind you only find when you're not trying to. People call it the sleepwalk, not because anyone sleepwalks down it, but because it only seems to appear to those caught in that strange halfway state between dreaming and waking. I've walked it once. Or maybe I didn't. Hard to say. What I remember is the sound of leaves rustling like whispered instructions, and the sudden certainty that if I kept walking, I'd find someone I'd lost. I turned back. I don't remember the walk home, just the warmth of my bed and the sharp taste of regret. Mara's youngest, a boy named Sen, talks in his sleep. Not the usual mumbling, but full sentences in a voice that's too steady for a child. He recites lists of birds, of names, of things that sound suspiciously like places that no longer exist. Once he said, "The gate is still open, but the light has changed." No one knew what it meant. Marta wrote it down anyway. The next morning, a mirror in the chapel cracked down the middle. Osric dismissed it as coincidence. Sindra left a bowl of milk and honey outside Sen's window for a week after that. The bowl was always empty by morning. He never thanked her, but he stopped speaking at night. Some believe that dreams travel in flocks, that they move across the land like birds or storms, sometimes passing over a village entirely, sometimes roosting for days. Elderlin, for reasons no one can quite explain, is a roosting place. Dreams settle here, nest, hatch. Not all of them belong to the people who dream them. This is understood. So when someone wakes in tears and can't say why, or wakes laughing at a joke they can't remember, no one presses. It's probably not theirs. You treat it kindly anyway. Feed it. Write it down. Let it leave in its own time. There's an abandoned well on the far edge of the village. Stone crumbled, rope long gone, bucket swallowed by time. It's dry now, but some nights you can hear something echoing up from its dark mouth. Not a voice. Not quite. More like a memory trying very hard to become sound. A dream fell in once, they say. A big one. Prophetic, dangerous, full of names and fire and all the usual drama. Someone woke from it in a panic and ran straight to the well to trap it, tossed a charm after it and said a prayer older than the chapel's roof. Whatever it was hasn't come back up. Yet, Elderlin doesn't have a formal priest anymore. But once a month, the villagers gather for what they call the Dream Vigil. It's held in the old chapel with the windows covered and the candles low. People bring dream scraps, drawings, bits of cloth, written phrases, even whispered confessions, and lay them on the altar. No one judges, no one speaks, unless the dream demands it. Once, a woman stood and sang a lullaby in a language no one knew. The air turned colder. A draft moved through the room even though the doors were shut tight. Afterward, no one mentioned it, but someone left a second blanket at her door that night. Children are told not to lie about dreams. It's not a moral lesson. It's a safety one. A false dream can attract real attention. You don't play with symbols. You don't invent visions just to be interesting. The dreaming world doesn't like being mocked. There's a cautionary tale about a boy who made up a dream about flying to impress a girl. That night he dreamed of falling instead. Not from the sky, but from something taller, something made of bone. He never spoke again, but he carves birds now. Hundreds of them. Tiny wooden things with wings stretched wide. He leaves them on windowsills. None of them ever fall over. The village lore says some dreams aren't dreams at all. They're visits. Someone thinking of you so strongly, so clearly, that their thoughts push through the curtain. Sindra says it's rare, but it happens. It's the difference between watching a fire and feeling its heat, she told me once. You'll know when it's real. I asked if she'd ever been visited. She didn't answer, but she looked tired in a way that sleep doesn't fix. Later I found a second pillow on her bed, neatly fluffed, slightly indented. No one else lives with her. No one has for years. There are herbs said to encourage dreaming: mugwort, valerian poppy, certain mushrooms that only grow under ash trees during wet years. But there are also plants meant to suppress it. Dreamless sleep, they say, is sometimes necessary, when a mind has seen too much, when the dreaming world starts pulling instead of showing. Elsin brews a tea for this purpose. She doesn't sell it. You have to ask for it directly, and she has to agree. It smells like smoke and lavender, tastes like forgetting. It's not for everyone, but there are nights when silence is the safest sound. And so Elderlin continues to sleep, to dream, to carry the strange weight of what visits its people in the dark. Dreams move through the village like fog, clinging to rooftops, curling around doorways, slipping through cracks in the floorboards. They are not always kind. They are not always clear, but they are always present. And here, in this place where belief is not decoration but foundation, people listen, they nod, they leave milk on the sill. They tell their children to blink twice before speaking, and when they dream, they do so with both fear and welcome in equal measure. There's an attic in Elderlin no one admits to using, though everyone knows it's there. It's in the oldest house, stone set, ivy choked, with windows like half-lidded eyes that always seem to be watching something too far away to name. The attic isn't locked, exactly. The door simply resists, not with force, but with suggestion. You reach for the handle and suddenly remember something urgent elsewhere: bread in the oven, a letter to write, a headache that wasn't there a moment ago. Marta says it's a place where dreams go when they're done with us, a sort of retirement. She's never been up there. She says that like it's a badge of wisdom. One boy, Jack, did go up once. Young, curious, utterly unburdened by superstition. He came back down before he'd even fully reached the top step, said nothing, slept for 2 days straight, no stirring, no twitch. When he woke, he spoke 3 different languages he hadn't known before, and then forgot them by sundown. Since then, he's perfectly normal, except for the way he avoids looking at rooftops, and the fact that he always sleeps facing the door. When asked what he saw, he only says, not what, who, and that's usually enough to end the conversation. Dreams often speak in symbols, but there are some that arrive unfiltered, too vivid, too loud, too detailed to be dismissed as metaphor. These are the ones people fear most. Marta calls them bone dreams, visions with weight, with smell, with gravity. You don't wake from a bone dream, you survive it. They leave marks too, scars that weren't there before, an extra freckle, a gap in the wall that wasn't cracked yesterday. Bran once had a bone dream and woke with her left shoe missing and her right shoe full of seawater. She burned both and didn't leave her house for a week. Sindra tells me the deepest dreams are not your own. They're borrowed, leased from something older, something trying to remember itself through you. You might dream of standing at a river that hasn't flowed in 1,000 years, or hear music that doesn't belong to any known instrument. When that happens, You're expected to listen, not interpret, not share. Just carry, like a candle in a room too large to light. These dreams fade slower. They follow you for days, appearing in puddles, in reflections in the corners of your eye where certainty doesn't quite reach. They don't want anything from you, just presence. Elson keeps a drawer of dream artifacts, not souvenirs, not keepsakes, just objects that arrived after particularly strong nights. A button that hums when touched, a key with no teeth, a thimble full of dried ink. She doesn't display them, she stores them in velvet, and speaks their names only on solstices. She says dreams sometimes shed pieces of themselves, and it's rude not to keep them safe. She gave me a small mirror once, said it came from a dream of hers. I looked into it and saw a version of myself asleep under a tree I didn't recognize, holding a book I've never owned. I haven't looked into it since. I still have it, wrapped in cloth, hidden in a drawer I forget to open. The baker, Branwyn, has begun waking with new recipes in her head, not unusual in itself. Dreaming of food is common enough, but hers come fully formed, complete with measurements and techniques she swears she never learned. Some are simple, others are peculiar. One bread required kneading under moonlight. Another could only be baked while silent. The first time she served it, half the village dreamed the same dream, a field of crows bowing to a weeping tree. Since then she's stuck to honey loaves and oatcakes, says the others felt too close to invitation. Not all dreamers are asleep. There's an old man named Harold, who sits by the well most afternoons with his eyes open but unseeing. He speaks rarely and only when spoken to, but sometimes he hums melodies that no one knows but everyone feels they've heard before. Some say he's dreaming while awake, his mind caught in a loop that never quite resets. Once a girl sat beside him for an hour and then stood up saying, "Thank you," like she'd been told something sacred. Harold didn't reply, but the next day she began sketching symbols into the dirt behind her house. They looked like maps, or maybe instructions. Elderlin is filled with little rituals meant to keep dreams from getting too bold. You sweep toward the hearth, not away from it. You whisper your name into the cupboard once a season. You leave one corner of the blanket untucked, in case something needs to leave quietly. None of these are enforced. They're simply done, like brushing crumbs off a table. Courtesy more than caution. The only rule taken truly seriously is this: never go to sleep angry with the village. Not with a person, not with a place, but with the village itself. If you do, the dream it sends will be personal and precise. There's a field just north of the mill, where the grass grows in spirals no matter how you cut it. Dreams grow there too. That's what the children say. They lie in the center and close their eyes and wait to see what images come. Most of the time it's just colors, shapes, nonsense. But once, a boy named Ren saw his mother's face exactly as it looked the day she died. He was 3 then, now he's 13. And he's planted a ring of stones around the field. He says it needs boundaries. He won't say why. The spiral keeps growing. The smith, Tharn, has begun inscribing small glyphs onto the inside of buckles and tools. Marks he doesn't remember learning. They appear in his dreams, bright and pulsing. And when he wakes, his hands move without asking. When questioned, he says therefore balance. A dream can't ride a crooked blade, he mutters. No one presses him. The symbols are beautiful in their own way, symmetrical, calming. Marta keeps one of his buckles in her pocket and touches it when the air feels wrong. Tharn doesn't charge her for them anymore, just says, "Keep the dream sharp." And as the village tucks itself in each night, candles blown out, windows latched with care, prayers whispered into bedposts, the dreams begin to stir, not wild, not wicked, just ready. They seep through floorboards and rustle under blankets, finding their way into minds that have spent all day pretending not to need them. Elderlin breathes in the dark, slow and sure, and the dreams come home, some to warn, some to comfort, some to simply remind. The villagers sleep, not always soundly, but never alone. For in Elderlin, dreams are not strangers, they are neighbors, and they always find their way back. There is a book in the village library, if one can call the mismatched shelf in the Reeves office a library that no one remembers borrowing, shelving, or donating. It's bound in cracked brown leather, stitched with thread that looks suspiciously like hair, and has no title. The pages are filled with dreams. Not stories, not journal entries. Dreams. Short, strange, often incomplete. I was made of bees. No one noticed until I laughed. Or he opened the window and poured in the ocean. Some are dated centuries apart. Others repeat with slight variations, as if whoever or whatever is recording them is trying to get it right this time. Osric swears it wasn't there last month. Marta claims it's always been there. The rest of us agree to disagree. One entry reads, "I buried my voice under the tree and woke up unable to lie." It's written in shaky hand, barely legible. Next to it, a pressed leaf. Net says the leaf is from a species that hasn't grown in this valley in over 200 years. I asked him how he knew that. He just said, "Because I had that dream too," and then changed the subject to soup recipes with such ferocity I let it go. Since then, I've checked the book once a week. Sometimes it has new pages. They're not blank, they're just waiting for you to notice them. Some say the dreaming mind has corridors, hallways of memory, rooms of fear, stairwells that lead to doors not meant for us. Occasionally, someone in Elderlin wanders too deep into those halls. They wake walking, not frantically, not confused, calm, deliberate, always toward something. Tharn once followed a sleepwalker for 2 hours before they stopped at the edge of the river, stared at the water, and whispered, "Not tonight." Then they turned and walked home. Didn't remember a thing, but Tharn insists the river rose a little that night, just enough to cover a stone that hadn't moved in years. There's a phrase passed down in Elderlin, "Dreams choose the willing." It sounds romantic, but it isn't. It's a warning. If you open yourself too much, invite too freely, the dreams will take it as permission. You'll stop dreaming at night and start drifting during the day. Gaps in memory. Unfamiliar handwriting in your own ledger. A humming in your ears when you're alone. Elson once treated a man who forgot what his own hands felt like. She made him hold a warm stone every morning for a month. It helped, she said. Not much, but enough. He dreams smaller now. Only weather and birds. The dreamless are rare and treated with a kind of wary respect. Not pity. Not suspicion. Just caution. As if they walk just slightly beside the rest of us. Branwen says it's like sleeping in a room with the curtains closed and the door locked. Safe, perhaps, but terribly lonely. One such woman, called Ilsa, lives in the hills. She hasn't dreamed in decades, says she doesn't miss it, but her windows are always open, and she leaves a candle burning long after midnight. Some say she's hoping for one last dream. Others think she's keeping watch. Sheeping watch. I'm not sure which is more noble. At the spring equinox, the village observes what's known as the telling. It's not a festival, not really. More like a collective exhale. People gather in pairs or threes and trade their most vivid dreams from the past year. No interpretations, no jokes. Just the telling. One person speaks while the others listen. Truly listen. As if the dream were a thing that might vanish if disrespected. It's an old tradition. Older than the well. Older than the road. Net believes it started when the villagers feared forgetting who they were. So they told each other dreams to stitch their memories into something communal. Something that would last. During the telling, Sindra often says nothing. She simply listens. Eyes half-lidded. Fingertips twitching like they're tracing unseen runes in the air. But once, years ago, she spoke a dream so long and detailed it took most of the evening. A city underground, lit by hanging stars where everyone wore masks, made of their own faces, where the walls whispered your name if you walked too quickly. When she finished, the whole room was silent. Marta lit a candle and placed it in the center of the floor. No one asked what it meant, but ever since, that candle's been lit during every telling, and no one dares to move it. Children often carry the heaviest dreams, not out of punishment, but proximity. They're closer to the veil, their minds still soft around the edges, still willing to believe that monsters can be kind and shadows can be friends. Tam once told me he dreams of an orchard where every apple has a secret inside. Some taste like laughter, others like guilt. He said one tasted like someone else's memory. He swallowed it anyway, said he woke up crying and didn't know why. The next day he left a wooden apple on the dream wall, carved with care, hollow in the middle. No one touched it, but the next morning it was gone. Dreams have rules. Even if we don't know them, you don't speak someone else's dream aloud without their permission. You don't lie in a dream, at least not successfully. And if you see yourself sleeping, you must wake immediately, or you won't. These aren't just sayings. They're observed like weather. Everyone knows someone who broke a rule once. Osric tells a tale of a man who dreamed he cheated death, only to find that death had changed the rules while he was gloating. The man woke with white hair and refused to speak anything but riddles. Marta calls it theatrics. Still, she doesn't tell her own dreams. There are places in Elderlin that don't dream, patches of land where sleep comes light and leaves fast. Rooms where no one remembers what they dreamed, even if they write it down the moment they wake. The corner of the mill house, the east-facing window in the apothecary's attic, the barn door with the rusted hinge. No one knows why. They're not dangerous, just quiet, untouched. Some say those places already dream for themselves and don't need you intruding. Others say they're empty, waiting. I've stood in one. It felt like being listened to by something with no mouth. And so we go on, through nights thick with meaning and mornings heavy with symbols, through shared silences and flickers of connection. Elderlin breathes in rhythm with its dreamers, a place stitched together by belief and ritual and memory that may never have been real. The dreams remain, whispered, painted, buried, gifted. Sometimes they warn, sometimes they heal, sometimes they just ask to be seen. And we, in our quiet homes with our flickering lanterns and carefully untucked blankets, do our best to answer, not always wisely, but always sincerely. Some villagers keep a dream shelf, a space above the hearth or beside the bed, filled not with books or tools, but with items found in dreams and later stumbled upon in waking life. A pebble shaped like a heart, a feather the color of ink, a coin with no country. Marta's is crowded with jars of herbs that grow only in memory, a comb she once saw in the hand of a woman made of fog, and a cracked eggshell wrapped in twine. She doesn't dust it. She says it's important not to disturb the order. Dreams are like cats, she told me once. They don't like to be rearranged. When someone dies in Elderlin, the first thing we do is ask if they've left behind a dream. Not a will, not a letter, a dream. Some record, spoken or scrawled, of what their mind gave them last. Sometimes it's just fragments. The sun was underground, or he forgave me, but that's enough. The reeve keeps them folded and sealed in a box made of you and quiet promises. It's not for reading, it's for safekeeping. We believe that a person's final dream is the part of them that tries to stay behind, not to haunt, just to finish the conversation. Occasionally, a new dream shows up in the box. No death to mark it, no signature to claim it, just new parchment, familiar ink, and a feeling that doesn't belong to anyone still living. These are handled carefully. Read once. Burned with dried rosemary, the ash scattered at the base of the old hawthorn tree. Sindra says those are dreams that miss their window. Elson says they're messages passed hand to hand across sleep, like a chain letter from the other side. Either way, we treat them with respect. Elderlin may be small, but its boundaries are more flexible than the map suggests. There's a story, half fable, half warning, of a woman who fell in love with her dream. Every night, she met the same man in the same place, a blacksmith's forge beneath a frozen lake. He spoke little, but his eyes burned like coals, and his touch warmed her from within. By daylight she was dull, absent, always waiting for night. Eventually she stopped speaking altogether, except to murmur his name which no one else could pronounce. One morning, she didn't wake. They found her in bed, lips curled in a half smile, skin cool but not cold. In her hand, a single iron nail, wet and warm. She's buried just outside the village. People leave her horseshoes and lullabies. Children sometimes draw their dreams in chalk on the cobblestones. It's innocent until it isn't. One spring, they began drawing a door, over and over. Same shape, same markings, always in the same spot by the fountain. No one recognized it. Then one morning it wasn't chalk anymore, just a shadow where the door would be. No matter the sun's angle, it lasted a week. Never opened, never moved, but everyone stepped around it, and even Crimp the dog wouldn't walk through. When it vanished, the children stopped drawing. None of them remember why they started. Or maybe they just won't say. The village sleep schedule is a little unorthodox. We rise with the sun, yes, but we nap often. Short rests, taken in chairs under trees on church pews softened by use. These naps are less about rest and more about permission. A way to listen, a way to check in. Dreaming isn't always for the night, Marta says. Sometimes you need a noon-sized dream to remember where your heart went. There's even a bench near the bakery that's said to offer better visions between the hours of 1 and 3. Elsith sits there every Tuesday, says it reminds her what not to forget. Dreams have become a form of communication. Quiet apologies, shared jokes. Sometimes people coordinate. Think of me tonight, someone might say, tapping a hand twice against a shoulder. It's not romantic, it's respectful. An invitation. Meet me in the orchard beneath the white tree, someone else might whisper. The next morning, they pass each other in silence. A small nod exchanged. Did they find each other? Did they both make it? You never ask. That's not how dreaming works. If they smile a little softer that day, you know enough. Once a year, someone dreams of the mirror man, always the same figure. Tall, face smooth and reflective, dressed in stitched shadows. He says nothing, but raises one hand palm open and mouths your name 3 times. People wake uneasy, their reflections odd for days, half a step out of sync or blinking wrong. No one knows what the dream means, only that it spreads one dreamer each year. They never dream it again, but mirrors are covered for a week afterward just in case. Sindra once caught her reflection whispering something in a dream. She won't tell what, just keeps her looking glass in a drawer now wrapped in cloth. Marta has a theory that some dreams are protective, shields for the mind, disguises for the soul, that we dream strange and terrifying things to keep the more dangerous truths away. Better to see a field of teeth than remember the real reason you're afraid of silence, she says. She believes that the dreams we dread the most are often the ones saving us. I asked her what her worst dream was. She looked at me for a long time, then said, "One where everything made sense." That answer still makes me uncomfortable. Fenn's machines are evolving. His latest one records what he calls resonant sleep. Not dreams, but the air around them. He places it under his bed, and each morning it plays a note, a single tone, never the same twice. Some days it's warm and round. Other times it's thin and jagged, like regret played on a string. He's begun composing with them, short melodies, eerie and quiet. The village children call them dream songs. The bakery plays them now and then, not for ambiance, for remembrance, for those dreams we can't carry but won't let go. And in all this, through the dreaming and the waking, the symbols and silences, Elder Lynn carries on. The village lives with its dreams the way you live with weather, patiently, with occasional preparation, and a healthy dose of respect. No one here pretends to understand all of it. That's not the point. The point is to listen, to honor, to blink twice before speaking, to keep your window just a little open, to know that dreaming is not a thing that happens to you but a place you sometimes return to. And if the path is familiar, if the door is unlocked, you step through, quietly, gratefully. And with both eyes closed, there's a rumor, rarely spoken above a whisper, of a dream that doesn't end. A long looping thing that catches you mid-sleep and pulls you into its rhythm, a meadow that never empties, a song with no final note, a road where the horizon always stays the same. It's called the long sleep, and those who've touched it wake with sore limbs and eyes that flicker like candlelight in wind. They say time behaves strangely in that dream. One woman claimed she lived a whole life there, grew old, watched her children marry, buried her husband beneath a tree with red bark, and then woke up to find her porridge still warm. She's quiet now, very kind, but very quiet. The innkeeper once said the long sleep is a kindness meant only for the lonely, a dream that gives what waking life withheld, not as a gift, but as a balm. I'm not sure if he speaks from knowledge or wishful thinking. He dreams rarely, or so he claims, and when he does, it's always the same dream. A cup of tea, untouched, waiting on a table he never reaches. He tells this like a joke, but he always glances toward the hearth afterward, like he's checking for someone or waiting to not be alone. There are travelers who pass through Elderlin, speaking of dream wards, sigils sewn into sleeves, rings carved with sleeping tongues, talismans that sing faintly if a dream approaches too quickly. One woman, cloaked in yellow and smelling of rain, sold a charm to Fen that was meant to trap nightmares and release them as moths. It worked, for a time. Then the moths stopped flying and simply gathered at the window, flapping their wings in unison. He took it apart and buried the pieces in separate corners of the garden. The wind hasn't quite sounded right there since. Sindra told me once that there are dreams that rot, ones left too long unspoken, buried under guilt or fear or shame. They fester. They change shape. What began as a memory or message becomes a haunt. You carry it in your shoulders, in the way you speak your own name. When the rot sets in, the dream stops visiting at night. It comes during meals, during stillness, in the silence between questions. She said the only cure is honesty, not confession, but clarity. You have to name it, she said, out loud, even if no one's listening. She handed me a cup of tea that smelled like sage and endings. Elderlin keeps a dream ledger for the lost, not the dead. Those are remembered elsewhere. The lost are the ones who walked out of the village and didn't come back. Not all were running. Some were searching, some were called. Once a season, the reeve reads a page aloud by the fountain, a single dream preserved in ink, belonging to someone no longer here. No one claps. No one weeps. But afterwards, someone always lights a candle and leaves it on the road's edge. A signal, a welcome, a hope that maybe the dreamer will see it and remember where they came from. Elson says there's a plant that grows only in the dreams of those who've forgiven themselves. Tall, violet, bell-shaped, humming softly when touched. She's never seen it herself, but she describes it in such detail that I wonder if she's lying or simply hasn't realized she's already dreamed it. She says if you find the plant in your sleep, you must not pick it. You must sit beside it until it fades. Only then does it count. Only then does it stay with you. I asked her what happens if you pick it anyway. She said nothing, just stirred her tea and watched the steam twist upward like a slow question. Tharn forged a bell once that rings in dreams. Not his own. Others he gave it to a girl who suffered from the kind of sleep that left bruises. Said it would warn her when the dreaming turned. She wore it around her neck. It never rang, but she started sleeping through the night. A year later she brought it back, and placed it on his forge. It was cracked down the middle, though no one remembers hearing it break. Tharn keeps it by the window. Now, sometimes he stares at it for hours. No one asks what he sees. Net, who dreams in color so vivid, it makes him dizzy upon waking, has taken to painting small tiles with the hues he remembers. No scenes, no figures, just swaths of color, fear green, laughter yellow, regret blue. He sells them at market in bundles of 3. People place them in drawers, under pillows, inside boots. He says they're not protective, they're reminders, anchors for the moments when waking doesn't quite hold, when you need to remember what a dream made you feel, even if you don't recall the dream itself. Sometimes, a stranger arrives with a dream so large it needs to be shared. Not told, shared. They don't always speak. Sometimes they sing or hum or simply hold your hand and let the dream pass like a pulse between your palms. You'll see flashes, feel warmth, smell something you haven't since childhood. It passes quickly, leaves you breathless. These dream bearers move on just as quickly as if drawn by an invisible thread. The village never asks where they come from, only that they're welcomed, fed, and given a place to rest. One such visitor carved a spiral into the side of the bakery. No one's touched it. It grows deeper each year. There's a deep belief in Elderland that dreams aren't bound by time, that some dreams are sent backward, echoes from tomorrow, fragments of what hasn't happened yet. Brina once dreamed of the baker's fire failing 3 days before it happened. She delivered logs without explanation and left a slice of pie behind. When asked why, she simply said, "Because I already did." We don't call it prophecy. We don't call it fate. We call it dreaming forward. And when it happens, we act gently. Because if tomorrow trusts you enough to warn you, you owe it kindness in return. And so the dreaming continues, stitched into the very air of Elderlin, into the walls and walkways and the rhythm of sleep itself. Some dreams come as warnings, some as visitors, some as burdens meant to be carried only until someone else is strong enough to lift them. But all are received with the same quiet promise. Here you will be heard. Here you will not wake alone. And even if the dream never returns, you will carry a piece of it in your coat pocket, in your breath, in the way your footsteps fall just slightly softer than before. The blacksmith's wife, Anwin, before she took her name back, once said that some dreams don't speak in images or words. They speak in weight. She described one as waking with the heaviness of an unopened letter pressing down on her chest. Not a frightening dream, not sad, just full. She carried that weight for 3 days, waiting for something to arrive. News, a change, a feeling. Nothing came. The weight simply lifted on the 4th morning, leaving a slight ache behind her ribs, like a goodbye said too early. She never spoke of it again, but sometimes in the market she presses her palm to her chest, like she's checking whether something has returned. Marta has been tracking dream weather again. She insists the dreaming world has seasons, much like our own, dormant in midwinter, volatile in spring, stubborn and thick in late summer. You can feel it, she says, in the texture of your sleep. She keeps a ledger by her bedside, filled with little notations. D shallow 3 birds waxen sky, or R choked river's hulled friend's voice at plum taste. She believes the collective dream mood of the village rises and falls like a tide. Last summer was all fire and tunnels. This spring so far has been stairs, endless stairs, people waking with sore calves and a lingering sense of purpose. There's a well-worn path behind the chapel, where lichen grows in the shape of spirals. You wouldn't notice unless you walked it daily. Children call it the sleepy line, and they believe if you step on the spiral's heart just before sundown, you'll dream someone else's dream that night. It's become a game, dares and bets and giggling reports the next morning about dreams full of someone else's handwriting or smells you've never known. But every now and then, someone goes quiet, says nothing about the dream, just walks slower the next day, like they're trying to make less noise in their own mind. Crimp, the village dog of indeterminate breed and spiritual authority, has his own dreaming habits. He sleeps with one eye slightly open, twitches his paws in rhythms too deliberate to be random, and occasionally barks in patterns that sound remarkably like names. Marta once recorded a series of his sleep sounds and matched them to stars, an accidental constellation. We now believe Crimp dreams in maps, not of places he's been, but of where we should go. He once led a lost child straight to the door of a long-abandoned cottage no one remembered existing. Inside, a bed still made, a single plate on the table, and a lit candle in a window facing no road. Elson says a dream is most dangerous when it makes you feel certain. Certainty, she says, is where dreams become prophecy or poison. A good dream leaves questions, she told me once. A dangerous one leaves instructions. She's refused to speak of her own dreams for years now, claiming it keeps her from being too sure, and yet she keeps a locked box on her windowsill, wrapped in old ribbons and sealed with wax. She claims it contains a dream she wrote down the night her sister died, a dream she's never read. I asked why keep it at all. She said, because even unopened it knows I haven't forgotten. There's a meadow east of Elderlin, where the grass grows silver in moonlight. No one farms it. The soil won't take to tools. But some nights, if you lie down there, arms at your sides, eyes closed, you'll feel something brush your fingertips. Not wind, not grass. Something slower, thoughtful. The brave say it's the dreaming world reaching back. The cautious say it's memory misplaced and lonely. Either way, people come. They leave offerings, strings of beads, fragments of poems, torn bits of fabric with names stitched in thread. None of it remains by morning, but those who return say the place remembers them. The village maintains a tradition called the forgetting, held quietly during the last frost. It's not widely spoken of. Participants arrive before dawn, each carrying a single item, something tied to a dream they no longer want to hold. A letter, a stone, a lock of hair. They walk the long path behind the Reeves house to a grove of ash trees, where they bury the item. No markers, no names. The trees have grown strangely twisted over the years, but strong. Afterward, participants return home and sleep. The next morning, they often can't recall what they buried, only that it was necessary, that something inside them finally sighed. Dreams have a scent, not metaphorically, literally. The baker says nightmares smell of old copper and lilac. Brenna insists happy dreams smell like wet parchment and wood smoke. Marta, who has the best nose in the village, once woke from a dream with tears in her eyes and said, "That smelled like the sea before it left me." No one questioned her. Elderlin doesn't trade in proof. Here, if someone tells you they dreamed of bees and their breath smelled of honey the next day, you believe them, you thank them. You sleep with your window open that night, just in case the bees have something more to say. Children are taught that dreams can stain. A strong enough one will leave its mark, not on the body, but on the way a person holds silence, on the way they pause before saying yes, on the way their laughter sounds just a little rehearsed. These are not considered wounds, more like calluses, evidence of having lived alongside the strange and survived. Morta says the people who have no stains at all are the ones you should worry about. Means nothing ever got through, she says. Or worse, means something did, and they managed to forget it, which in Elderlin is considered more dangerous than remembering. And still, each evening as the last lanterns are lit and the wind presses its face against the glass, Elderlin prepares itself for dreaming. Boots are set neatly by the door, curtains are drawn just so, names are whispered softly, those of the living, the lost, and the hoped for. Sleep arrives not with certainty, but with agreement, a shared understanding that whatever the night brings, whether message or madness, it will be held carefully, collectively, as if each dream is a thread, and the village one enormous tapestry still in the making, some stitches neat, others crooked, all of them true. The village apothecary, who answers to both June and you there with the jars, keeps a notebook labeled simply sleepwork. Inside are dozens of entries, observations of how certain herbs influence dreaming, when taken not as remedies but as invitations. June insists that valerian opens the door, but mugwort decides what walks through. Chamomile, they say, is too polite to bring strong visions, but too curious to leave you in peace. Once, on a dare, June brewed a tea with blue poppy and something only labeled moonleaf. They dreamt for 3 days straight, speaking in verse the entire time. When they woke, they had no memory of what they'd said, but the bees outside their shop began building hexagons in perfect spirals. People have stopped asking Jun for strong sleeping drafts, unless they really mean it. The last one who did, a weaver named Tell, dreamt of an underground cathedral made entirely of frost. He said he could hear the prayers of extinct animals echoing through its pillars. When he woke, his hands were too cold to work for 2 weeks. No visible cause, just chill in his bones. Jun offered a salve and a quiet apology. Tell doesn't take tea anymore. He says he prefers naps in sunlight and dreams about nothing in particular. I've had enough sermons, he said, even beautiful ones. Some dreams arrive before the sleeper does. A person will begin describing a vision before they've truly fallen asleep. Half-lidded, not fully present, as if they're repeating something they're overhearing. Bran calls it dream thieving. Net believes it's a sign of an old soul. I once sat with Tharn as he dozed by the forge and muttered, "Tell the river I forgive it." He never remembered saying it, but the next morning, the riverbank flooded a little. Not violently, just enough to cover the roots of the hawthorn tree. No one blamed him. Forgiveness has consequences even if the person you're forgiving is made of water. Fen has started carving dreams into wood. Not images, not stories, just impressions. A curl here that means hesitation. A groove that suggests hunger. He works in silence, his fingers moving like they're being guided from the wrist, down by something with long patience. He doesn't explain them. Just labels the finished pieces with names like "the window didn't open," or "too many shoes at the door." The villagers buy them and hang them by their beds. Not to interpret, just to remember that something strange once passed through someone else's mind and left a shape behind. The dream is in the grain. The animals of Elderlin are no strangers to dreams. Cats twitch in their sleep and wake yowling at corners where nothing stands. Horses sometimes refuse to enter their stalls, wide-eyed and silent. Elsith's goat once circled a well for an entire morning before curling up next to it and refusing to move. Marta patted its head and whispered, "All right then, you saw something." She lit a candle and left it beside the bucket. The flame burned green and quiet. The goat has since returned to normal behavior, though it no longer eats from anyone's hand but hers. Trust, apparently earned in sleep, is a stubborn thing. There's a kind of dream Elderlin calls a thresholder. You know it by the feeling, not fear exactly, but tension, pressure, like standing in front of a door you're not sure you should open. These dreams often end just before something is revealed. The turning of a key, the lifting of a veil, the foot placed on a new path. They leave the dreamer unsettled, restless, like they've nearly been chosen for something they didn't ask for. Sindra says these dreams are promises. Marta says they're warnings. Elsin says they're both, which is worse. I've had one. Just once. I still think about it every time I hear footsteps that don't match my own. The oldest man in the village, a man known only as Yarrow, claims to dream in seasons. Each night of winter is snow. Each night of spring, rivers. He says summer brings too much light, and he wakes with headaches. But autumn, his dreams in autumn are always the same. A procession of figures in gold robes, walking a spiral path toward a tree that burns without ash. He describes it calmly, like a weather report. Says the figures nod to him sometimes, and one once handed him a cup. He tasted something like apple and iron. When he woke, his mouth bled slightly. Morta gave him mint and stitched a leaf into his collar. The chapel bells, long rusted and mostly ornamental now, have begun to chime in the early hours of certain nights. No wind, no hands, just a single low tone always around the third hour before dawn. The villagers don't acknowledge it aloud, but everyone hears it. Dreams those nights tend to carry a different taste. More silence, more waiting. I asked the Reeve about it once. She said, "Perhaps something needs reminding." Then she offered me a lantern and said nothing more. I carried it home and didn't light it, but I placed it by the door, just in case forgetting had become impolite. Sometimes people wake from dreams with new names. They don't change them legally. There's no such thing in Elderlin. But they begin asking to be called something else. Something softer, something sharper. The village obliges. Net once became hollow for 6 months. Branwen spent a season as Stoneweather. It's not questioned. Names are flexible things here, shaped by what you carry while unconscious. When the name no longer fits, it's laid down gently, like a coat no longer needed. People take on new names with reverence. Never twice the same one, never someone else's. Dreams are possessive about identity. Elson has a theory that dreams sometimes braid themselves. Not one dream, but several interwoven threads from different people, times, even languages. A kind of shared dreaming that doesn't announce itself but leaves clues. A symbol you later see scratched into a stone. A phrase another dreamer swears they've heard. A sense of déjà vu that feels deeper than usual. She's begun charting these braids on a wall behind her work table. Not a map. Not quite. More like a web of threads that occasionally hum under candlelight. She touches the intersections like a musician tuning something ancient. She says it helps her sleep more soundly. And so another night begins. Shadows stretch long over cobbled paths. Curtains are drawn softly like the closing of a book between pages. A few lanterns flicker with the color of old copper. Somewhere a kettle whistles just once. The villagers settle. Not in fear, not in haste, but with the same solemnity one gives to prayer. Dreams wait at the edge, some new, some familiar, some shaped like questions no one yet knows how to ask. And Elderlin, wrapped in stillness, exhales. It's not sleep that binds the village. It's trust. Trust that whatever comes in the night will be met with eyes willing to see, and hearts still tender enough to believe. In the far corner of Elderlin, tucked behind the mill where the shadows stack like books no one's read, there's a narrow cottage with 3 chimneys and no smoke. It belongs to no one and yet is always tidy. The door never opens, the windows stay laced with dust, and the ivy that climbs its walls never wilts, even in winter. Children call it the sleeper's house. They dare each other to knock, none ever do. Not really. Once, a boy left a flower on the doorstep. The next day the flower was gone. And the boy dreamed he was old, sitting in a chair in that very house, sipping tea with someone who wore his face but spoke in riddles. Marta says the house dreams on behalf of the village. It keeps the overflow. When too many minds dream too deeply, it catches the excess, holds it, digests it, stores it like a winter larder. That's why, she claims, no one's ever seen the roof leak or the ivy freeze. The house is full of dreams pressed into its beams and floorboards like dried herbs. Elson says she once smelled thyme and salt when she passed too close to it. Said it reminded her of a memory she didn't have. She doesn't walk that way anymore. Calls it respectful avoidance. Dreams have moods, not feelings. Moods, a kind of weather inside them. Some are brittle. Everything in them seems breakable, fragile, tense. Others are thick, humid, so heavy with emotion. You wake up and need to wring out your thoughts, like wet laundry. Brina dreamed once of being inside a cathedral made of fabric. Every surface soft, muffled. The air so saturated with longing she couldn't speak. She said she woke up gasping. Not from fear, but from the effort of trying to remember who she missed. Marta handed her a sprig of marjoram and told her to sleep under her oldest blanket. It worked, mostly. Some dreams echo for days. Not in the head, but in the world. Doors that creak with a tune you swore you heard while sleeping. A patch of ground that suddenly feels known, though you've never stood there. Elderlands full of these places. Corners of alleys that hum, stairwells that feel expectant. Most people just live with them. You tip your hat. You nod. You don't ask questions you aren't ready to carry the answers to. One such place is the path behind the wren, where the stones shine blue just before rain. Sindra swears it's because someone dreamed of sapphires once and spilled the idea there. Osric's daughter, Lonnie, used to draw her dreams before she could speak. Charcoal and soot, mostly. Shapes and spirals and creatures with eyes on the inside of their hands. She once drew a perfect map of the village, including a house that hadn't been built yet, and another that had burned down before she was born. Osric burned the page gently and hung a bell over her cradle. Now she only dreams in colors. Says she wakes up tasting blue or hearing green. She's 7. Last week, she drew a staircase that Marta refused to look at. Elson folded the paper into a boat and let it float down the river. It sank immediately. There's an old belief that a dream unspoken becomes heavier, that the longer you hold it inside, the more it bends you, tilts your smile, warps your laugh, stretches your silences. That's why the dream wall exists. Why people murmur to flowers and write on stones. Not to be understood, just to set something down. Even Crimp once barked at the dream wall for 10 full minutes. The next morning, a strip of parchment appeared beneath one of the stones, a series of paw prints shaped like stars. Fen framed it, says it's his most honest piece of art. Some villagers sleep facing north, some south, some change direction every night, depending on the weather or the way their heart feels. It's not superstition, it's orientation, like angling yourself toward something distant but attentive. Marta says north-facing sleep brings colder, clearer dreams, sharp as frost, bright as bells. South is heavier, warm, often full of ancestors. She sleeps east when she wants answers, west when she wants comfort. I asked her which way she faced when she wanted nothing at all. She looked at me, then said, "Then I don't sleep." Net swears there's a particular cloud that carries dreams. A soft gray one that doesn't move like the others. It hovers, low and slow, and when it passes over the village, the dreams that night are always full of climbing, ladders, ropes, staircases that never seem to reach. He watches the sky each evening, just in case. Sometimes he waves at it. Once, he fell asleep in a chair with his arms still raised. Dreamed he was pulling himself up an endless rope that sang like birdsong when touched. He woke with sore arms and a smile. The sky that morning was clear, completely. There are dream thieves, or so the stories say. Not monsters, not demons, just people who've forgotten how to sleep honestly. They slip into others' dreams, peel off layers, steal the sweetness, leave the husk. You wake up feeling used, like someone borrowed your heart without asking. No one knows who they are. Maybe no one specific. Maybe just a hunger that learned how to walk. Elderland protects its sleepers in quiet ways. Salt lines, iron pins, bells tied with black thread. You never point fingers. You simply tend the damage. Leave a loaf on a doorstep. Whisper a name 3 times and hope it doesn't echo back. Every so often, a dream becomes a song. Not one you can hum. Not exactly. But one you can feel in your chest like the tail end of thunder. Brian once dreamed a lullaby she couldn't sing aloud, only whistle. The notes made the birds fall quiet, made the reeve cry. No one knows why. She doesn't whistle it anymore, but the sound still sits in her house. In the wood of the floorboards, the weight of the silence. Guests sleep deeply there, sometimes too deeply. One man overslept by a day and claimed he saw his future through a crack in the wall. He left without taking his boots. And yet, Despite all this strangeness, no one in Elderland fears dreams, respects. Yes, prepares for, absolutely, but not fear. You only fear what wants to harm you. Dreams don't want. They offer, show. Sometimes they warn, sometimes they reflect. But mostly they accompany. They walk beside you when waking leaves you weary. They remind you in strange shapes and backward languages that you are not alone, not even in your own mind. The village understands this. It's why we listen when someone starts a sentence with, "I had the strangest dream." It's why we sleep with one hand open, just in case someone's reaching back. There's a candle in the apothecary's window that never seems to burn down. Not a large one, just a squat little stub in a clay dish, ringed with old wax and ash. It flickers even when no wind stirs, and if you watch it long enough, the flame begins to sway in time with something you can't quite hear. Jun calls it a listening flame, says it records nearby dreams like a weaver might gather stray threads. When someone passes by whispering in their sleep, the flame flutters. When someone lies awake thinking about a dream they can't forget, it leans toward the thought, like a flower toward sun. Elson claims the candle once blew itself out the moment a man told a lie. He relit it, apologized, and the flame returned, slightly smaller, slightly colder. The Reeves office keeps a strange object on her desk, a small cube of polished stone, darker than ink, warm to the touch even in winter. She says it's a dream weight, meant to hold down especially persistent dreams, not trap them, not erase them, just press them flat, make them manageable. People come to her now and then, voice soft and eyes tired, and she lets them hold the stone, just for a moment. They usually leave quieter, sometimes lighter. Once, a boy held it too long and began humming in a language he didn't know. The cube was locked in a drawer for a month after that. It still hums faintly now and then, like it remembers something important. Marta tells of borrowed dreams, visions sent by someone else's longing. She says they're common between close friends, lovers, siblings, that sometimes you'll dream someone else's grief because their own mind couldn't bear it that night. It's an act of love, though it never feels like it. You wake with weight in your chest, a taste in your mouth that doesn't match your life. You recognize a stranger's face and ache without knowing why. Most people shrug it off, but the villagers here know to ask, not directly but gently. Did you sleep well? Means something more. It means, are you carrying something of mine? Not all dreams are soft. Some come with teeth. The villagers call them churners, the kind that twist the belly and leave your thoughts lopsided all day. They don't always scare, but they unsettle. A field where everyone has your face. A mirror that breathes. The sound of your own voice pleading with you in a room with no walls. These dreams pass, but they leave behind fingerprints. Small hesitations. New habits. Branwyn bites her lip when she's thinking now. Says she didn't used to. Net checks his shadow twice each morning. No one mocks this. In Elderland, you treat churners with the same respect you'd give a wild animal wandering into your yard. Quiet, calm, eyes down, door open. Sindra believes the mind has doors, and some dreams are keys. The trick, she says, is knowing which key fits which lock, and which locks should never be opened. She teaches dream reading to those brave or foolish enough to ask. Not interpretation, not symbols, reading. Listening to a dream like it's telling you a story in the wrong order. She'll sit with someone, ask them to describe the dream from the middle first, then the end, then the beginning last. Somehow the meaning reshapes. Sometimes it evaporates. Dreams lie, she says, but only when told front to back. In Elderland, it's considered poor form to end a conversation about a dream with certainty. You always leave it open. Maybe it meant something, you say, or perhaps it was just the stew. It's not that people avoid conclusions, it's that finality has a way of attracting attention. If you say that dream meant X, You risk something listening in and saying, "Oh, let me clarify." So people hedge. They nod. They keep a little uncertainty folded in the pocket of their minds. Like a charm, dreams don't mind uncertainty. In fact, they prefer it. Brina once dreamed she was a crow flying over the village, seeing everyone's secrets as colors. Guilt was green. Love, violet. Regret showed up as yellow smoke curling around chimneys. She said she spent most of the dream trying not to look at anyone too closely. When she woke, she avoided eye contact for a full day. Morta gave her a blue scarf to wear around her shoulders and said, "You're not meant to see all that." Brina wore the scarf for a week. Then she gave it to someone else without explaining why. That's how healing moves here, quietly, hand to hand, without naming itself. There's an unspoken belief that a dream shared aloud becomes less likely to return. Not always, but often, that by voicing it, you release its hold. Some people hoard dreams because of this, afraid that by speaking them, they'll lose something sacred. Others speak them immediately, like curses they're trying to cast out. The bakery once hosted a dream spill, a morning where anyone could speak their dreams into the rising steam. Lissa kept the windows open. The room was thick with truth that day. Everyone said the bread tasted different. Warmer, wiser, like it had something to say back. Occasionally, someone sleepwalks into the chapel and kneels at the altar. They never remember doing it. They never leave offerings. Just kneel for a time, then rise and return home. It's become a quiet ritual. The reeve leaves the door unlatched on moonless nights. No candles are lit. No hymns are sung, just presence. It's said that the old gods, if they ever came here, prefer that kind of worship. The kind that doesn't demand, doesn't promise, just arrives with quiet breath and borrowed sleep. Even the earth dreams, or so the oldest tales go. That's why stones hum before storms. Why certain trees lean in toward travelers like they're eavesdropping. Why the river sometimes sings songs no one has taught it. There's a boulder in the northern field that's warm even in frost. People touch it before big choices. No reason, no blessing promised. It's just a rock that's been listening longer than any of us. Morta claims to have once dreamed of its heartbeat, said it sounded like thunder waiting for permission. And as another night draws in over Elderlin, you can feel the dreams beginning to gather, not rushing, just arriving, the way fog does, the way silence does, slowly, confidently, like something with the right to be here. People draw their curtains, tuck their notes, light the small lamps filled with dream oil and rosemary, and then they lie back, eyes closed, minds open, just enough. Not too far, just enough to say, "I'm here, show me gently." And the dreams, loyal as old friends, arrive, some heavy, some bright, all waiting to be remembered. There's a cellar beneath the Reeves house that no one uses for storage anymore. Not since the jars started rearranging themselves. Quietly, of course. Subtle enough that you doubt your own memory until you reached for the elderberry and found sage, or went to grab kindling and saw the logs stacked in a spiral instead of a pile. The Reeve believes the cellar is dreaming, not haunted, not cursed, just deep in some old slumber, replaying the shapes of things long forgotten. She still goes down there once a week with a lantern and a loaf of bread, leaves both on the center table, and whispers, "If you wake, be kind." Sometimes a dream arrives dressed like a memory, so vivid, so precise, you wake convinced it happened. You remember the smell of the room, the scrape of a chair, the exact expression on someone's face. Then you realize it's not yours. A detail slips, a person you've never met, a house you've never entered. Elderlin folk treat these as inherited dreams, fragments passed down like recipes, mismatched, but meaningful. Branwen once dreamed of sewing a dress she never owned for a daughter she never had. She woke with her hands aching and the taste of tears on her tongue. That afternoon she stitched a shawl without a pattern and gave it to a stranger who'd just arrived. "For what you're carrying," she said. and what's carrying you. Fenn's dream machine, Harold II, as he's begun calling it now records tone. Not pitch, not melody, but emotional texture. He places strips of copper across his pillow connected by tiny coils and iron nails. Each morning, the wires are cold or warm, light or dense. He logs the changes obsessively, cross-referencing with moon phase, diet, proximity to crimp. Last week, after eating too much cinnamon, Harold emitted a single tone that made all the spoons in Fenn's kitchen ring slightly out of tune. He considered it a success. He now avoids cinnamon and dreams of better acoustics. Sindra teaches that not all dreams are finished. Some end mid-thought, mid-sentence, mid-fall. These are open dreams, she says, and they will return until you learn to land, or leap, or listen. They don't follow rules. They spill, bleed into the next night. They may show up weeks later disguised in a different setting, wearing a different face. She trains her students to keep a dream net, a series of signs and cues that help them recognize the repeat visitors. A red door, a silver cup, a shadow without a source. When you see it, she says, don't react, just walk slowly. It's already seen you. There are legends of the sleepless dreamers, people who don't sleep, but dream anyway. Not daydreams, not hallucinations. True dreams, layered over waking life like a second skin. They walk among us half here, half elsewhere. Osric once met a man on the road who spoke in riddles about a garden made of ash and time. When asked where he was going, the man said, I'm returning from what hasn't happened. He was gone before the next breath. The spot where he'd stood smelled faintly of mint and river stone. That night, half the village dreamed of their childhood homes, upside down and filled with bees. Marta believes dreams speak in scent. Not always, but often enough to matter. Smell cuts deeper, she says. Memory can lie. Scent doesn't bother. She keeps a shelf of vials filled with the dream scents she's captured. Burnt honey, iron and rain, candle smoke on wool. People come to smell them when they've forgotten what a dream meant but can't forget how it felt. One woman broke down sobbing after catching the scent labeled hearthlight. Said it reminded her of her grandmother's voice during thunderstorms. There's a scent Marta never lets anyone open. The label is blank. She touches it sometimes. That's all. A field near the river floods every spring, and when the water recedes, the reeds grow in strange patterns, circles, knots, spirals. Elson believes they are dream residue, left behind when the dreaming world leaks. She visits the field with ink and paper, sketching the formations and humming softly. Once she found her own name spelled in reeds. Not the name she goes by, but the name she stopped using years ago. She burned that drawing without ceremony. The next day her dreams were silent. No images, no sound, just darkness, dense as velvet. She didn't sketch again for a month. The dream wall, once used only for brief markings and symbols, now has sections. One for grief, one for longing, one for joy. People have begun to draw fuller scenes, inked figures embracing in mist, staircases leading into clouds, a child holding hands with a star. Net brings charcoal wrapped in cloth, trades it for berries or songs. He says the wall is hungrier lately, that its stones drink more quickly. When I touched it last, it was warm, like a sunbeam through glass, or someone's hand reaching back. Crimp, in his usual unknowable fashion, has taken to sleeping under different windows each week. No pattern, no favor, just appears. Curls up, snores once, and dreams. People mark the windows he chooses. Leave tokens, coins, herbs, scribbled words. Those who wake above him report vivid dreams. Ones with answers, with messages, with names that haven't been spoken in years. One woman woke whispering the name of a lost brother. Another hummed a song that hadn't existed until that moment. Crimp never comments. He merely moves on, tail swishing like punctuation. There's an old rule in Elderlin. When someone says, "I think I've dreamed something important," you stop what you're doing and listen. Doesn't matter if it's mid-bread, mid-sentence, mid-winter. You sit down, you look them in the eye, you let them speak. Even if the dream makes no sense, even if it's absurd, you hold the space. Because sometimes, meaning arrives late, days later, years. But when it does, you'll remember that moment, and you'll be glad you didn't brush it off. Dreams have long memories. They notice who listens. And so once again, night lays its hand across the rooftops of Elderlin. Not heavy, not forceful. Just enough to remind. Windows close with soft clicks. Tea cools beside beds. Crickets begin their ancient percussion. And the air thickens with that quiet waiting that always precedes the first dream. There is no fear. Only readiness. A kind of practiced welcome. Eyes close. Breaths deepen. And the dreaming begins. Not loud, not wild, just steady. Like footsteps returning to a place that knows their sound. The archivist, who technically isn't an archivist at all, just an old man named Dane who likes to write things down, keeps a ledger of every dream mentioned to him. He sits near the square with a chipped mug and a feather pen, and if someone happens to say, "I had a dream," within earshot, he jots a quick note. Not the dream itself, just the details that cling: weather, time, tone of voice, what color their sleeves were when they spoke. He calls it contextual dreaming. The dream is one thing, he says, but the telling of it, that's where the soul gets involved. His books are kept in boxes beneath his table, organized not by year but by temperature and bird presence. Once he told me he was waiting for a pattern, not a prophecy, he clarified. Patterns are humbler. They don't want attention, just acknowledgement. I asked if he'd found one yet. He said, maybe. Then he showed me 3 entries, written 5 years apart, one where the wind howled at midnight, and a child dreamt of hands without fingers, another where a goat wouldn't stop watching the moon, and a third where a woman woke convinced she'd swallowed someone else's voice. All 3 happened on a Tuesday, in April, under a waxing gibbous. When I asked what it meant, he just smiled and said, "Still listening." There are dreams that feel like traps, not nightmares. Those are loud, dramatic, sometimes even helpful in their own way. No, these are quieter, places where your feet sink just slightly too deep, where conversations loop, where the sky looks wrong but only a little. You wake with a headache, and the sense you left something behind, though you don't know what. The villagers call them snare dreams. Tharn says they're caused by thoughts you didn't finish. Bran says they're messages meant for someone else that got misdelivered. Either way, if you have one, you're meant to write something before bed the next night. A sentence, a secret, a question. Fold it, sleep on it, and wait to see if the dream verification. Jun has been experimenting with dream salts. Not to induce dreams, but to anchor them. She sprinkles them in bowls and places them under chairs where people often rest. Over time, the salts crystallize into strange shapes, knots, arches, sometimes symbols that look vaguely like letters. She claims the shape tells her how close the dream was to manifesting. One batch formed a perfect spiral, which she ground up and fed to a tree. The tree bloomed out of season, and the bees built a hive in the shape of a question mark. Net took a jar of the honey and reported that it made him dream of nothing at all. For once, he cried with relief. There's a kind of dream Elderlin calls keepers, dreams that don't fade when you wake. Not the content, not the feeling, the whole thing, vivid, arborescent. Like a memory you didn't live. You remember textures, dialogues, you can draw the doorframe you walked through. One man woke with a tune in his head from a dream orchestra and later found it written in the margins of a psalm in the chapel, 14 years before he was born. He doesn't go to the chapel anymore, but he hums the song while he works. Not every day, just when the sky feels watchful. There are sleepers who've built whole lives inside dreams, not lucid dreams, those are something else. These lives run parallel. They have routines, jobs, families, memories that don't intersect with the waking world at all. When they sleep, they return, like stepping through a door into the second half of themselves. One woman swears she's a baker in her dream life, though here in Elderlyn she can't boil water without burning it. She wakes with flour under her nails, crumbs on the floor. Her dream children, she says, have freckles and ask good questions. She's never told her waking husband, says she doesn't need to. Branwen tells of a rare kind of dream called a fold. It's a dream within a dream, but not in the theatrical sense. More like a pocket, a tucked away piece of reality you only find if you sit down in a dream and wait. Most people move too fast in dreams, she says. They follow, chase, run. A fold reveals itself when you stay still long enough. The dream peels back, shows another layer, usually slower, older, quieter, like the bones beneath the house. Bran found a fold once, sat by a stream for what felt like a week. When she woke, her boots were soaked, and the stream outside her home had shifted its course slightly, just enough to suggest it had remembered something. Elson believes that some dreams teach you languages, not new ones but lost ones, not necessarily human. She calls them root tongues, the way trees might speak, if given time and rhythm, or the way stone might hum if it needed to say stay. She says she once dreamed of a conversation with a hill, woke up and couldn't speak for 3 days. Not out of fear, just didn't need to. When she finally did, her first word was enough. No one asked what she meant, but that day the wind changed direction, and even the birds flew differently. Sometimes two people dream the same thing and don't know it until they speak. A doorway, a phrase, a scent they both wake up with in their clothes. These shared dreams are called twinings, and Elderlyn treats them like omens. Not bad, not good, just important. If it happens, both dreamers must sit together, even briefly, share bread, say nothing about the dream, just eat. It's a way of weaving the dream into the world gently so it doesn't fray. Elsith once dreamed she was holding the moon's hand. Net had the same dream. They shared a loaf of sourdough in silence. No one knows what changed, but the village felt lighter for a few days afterward. Dreams sometimes carry smells into waking. This isn't metaphor. This isn't metaphor. This is fact. A woman once woke with her sheets smelling of ash and lavender, exactly the scent of her childhood home, burned down 2 decades prior. Another woke with the smell of seawater, though she'd never left the valley. Sindra calls it residual dreaming. Jun says the boundary between dream and skin thins with age, or grief or love that's grown teeth. I once woke to the scent of petrichor and rosemary. Morda simply smiled and said, "You've been walking with someone." I asked who. She said, "That's the part the dream doesn't tell." And so, under another quilt of stars and quiet wind, Elderlyn leans into sleep once more. Crickets begin their lullaby. Chimneys puff their final breath. Somewhere, a page turns in a book that wasn't open a moment ago. The village exhales, slow, practiced, like it's done this for centuries, which of course it has. The dreams arrive like regulars at a familiar inn. They know where to sit, where the floor creaks, which sleepers need company, and which ones need a question, and all through the night. The dreaming continues, layered, generous, and deeply, utterly alive. There's a bridge just outside Elderlyn that no longer crosses anything. The river it once spanned was redirected generations ago, yet the bridge remains, stone, worn, and inexplicably warmer than the ground around it. People still walk across it out of habit, out of reverence. They say dreams pass under it, even if water no longer does. You don't loiter on the bridge. You don't sit or sing or argue there. It's a threshold now, a liminal space made of memory and moss. Net once fell asleep against one of the posts during harvest season and woke whispering numbers. Not prices or dates, just numbers over and over like they meant something. He stopped after 3 days and never said another word about it. Brina claims the bridge is where unfinished dreams wait, ones that haven't quite found a place to land. Not nightmares. Those are too impatient. These are subtler, quieter. They wait under the bridge, catch the scent of a sleeper passing overhead, and climb into their dreams like stray cats into an open window. You might wake with a strange word on your tongue, or the memory of a face you've never seen. You won't remember the dream, only the sense that something had been mid-sentence when you left. People leave breadcrumbs and milk on the bridge now, not for spirits, but for the narratives left behind. Marta keeps a list of words that first appeared in dreams, words not found in any book, but passed from sleep into speech. Loathering, for instance, the feeling of knowing someone from a dream, even though you're meeting for the first time. Or thin-tide, the moment before waking, when everything in the dream becomes more vivid, more real, like it's resisting your departure. She has pages of these. No definitions at first, just the shape of the word and the dream it crawled out of. She waits to see if anyone else uses them. Sometimes they catch on, sometimes they vanish, but every word is written down. Dreams often hide inside stories. Someone will sit down to tell a tale, something about a fox and a bell or a door that sings, and halfway through you realize it's not a story at all. It's a dream, polished and recited, so often it's become believable. No one interrupts, no one questions. Elderlin knows better. You let the tale finish, you nod. And later, when the storyteller isn't looking, you make a note in your own journal, because dreams like that don't belong to one person. They're communal. They come to whoever's ready to carry them next. The baker's boy, Tove, has started sleep baking. At first it was little things, a shaped biscuit, a strange design etched in flour. But last week he woke to find a loaf of bread he doesn't remember making, warm and perfect, set on the sill. He called it waking bread, and when Brina ate a piece, she cried, said it tasted like her grandmother's garden in the middle of a thunderstorm. Tove keeps a dream diary now, not of his own dreams, he doesn't remember those, but of the dreams others have after eating his sleep-made loaves. They're full of flowers and letters and rooms with 2 moons. There's a child who dreams in silence. No sounds, no voices, no ambient noise at all, just images crystal clear and unsettlingly still. She drew one once, a deer in a stone room, its antlers tangled in vines that spelled out a name she'd never heard. The drawing was left on the chapel steps. The next morning the vines around the altar had grown in the same shape. Marta cut them down and burned them. Nothing else happened. But for 3 days, no birds sang in Elderlin. Even the river sounded like it was holding its breath. Elson believes the dreaming world has geography, mountains of memory, rivers of forgetting, forests made of questions. You can learn to travel it, she says. But it's better to be carried. She maps it in chalk on her walls. Crumbling cliffs labeled regret, small islands called if-onlys. She once charted a full coastline during a fever and swears she still dreams about the harbor there. It smells like lost time, she said, and every boat is already leaving. I asked if she's ever tried to get on one. She looked at me like I'd missed the point. You don't go to leave, she said. You go to remember what you wanted. Some people talk in their sleep, but Elderlin pays special attention to those who answer in their sleep, not echoing a sound or mumbling nonsense, but responding. Elsith's husband once whispered, "I understand," and no one had spoken to him. The next morning, he built a bench he didn't need and placed it beside the mill, said it was for a visitor. No one asked more. The visitor arrived a week later, a man who claimed to have followed a dream all the way from the next valley. He sat on the bench, wept, and left before dusk. The bench remains, untouched, waiting again. The river, despite its many practical uses, is widely believed to be a dreamkeeper, not a metaphorical one, literal. Marta says the current knows which dreams are safe to carry and which ones need anchoring. When someone can't sleep, They write down the dream they wish they'd had and float it downstream in a waxed envelope. If it's accepted, the river stays calm. If not, it rises a little. Enough to lap at the bank. Enough to remind you to be more careful with your intentions. Net once sent 3 dreams and received back a frog with a mark on its back shaped like a key. He still doesn't know what it unlocks. Elderlin has no formal temple to dreams, but it doesn't need one. Dreams are baked into the bricks, the soil, the spaces between conversations. They live in the patterns of ivy, in the leaning of fences, in the way someone pauses mid-step and stares at a window for no reason they can name. You don't need altars when the whole village has become one. You only need to treat each moment, each silence, each story, each flicker behind the eyes, with the care due a sacred thing. Because in Elderlin, dreams are not guests. They're family. Strange, unpredictable, sometimes inconvenient family, but deeply loved all the same. And so, another night prepares its quiet descent. The sky shifts from gold to bruised violet. The lanterns flicker into life, casting halos on doorways and familiar paths. A breeze carries the scent of rosemary and something older, something that smells like sleep just about to begin. The village tilts gently towards slumber, and the dreams begin to uncurl, stretching like cats in warm windows. And one by one the sleepers follow. The old clock tower at the edge of Elderlin doesn't keep time anymore. Its hands stopped 57 years ago at 3:11 in the morning, and no one has bothered to fix them. The villagers say it's better that way. Time's softer when it sleeps, Marta once said, nodding toward the frozen clock face. And sure enough, anyone who naps within earshot of the tower, especially in the late hours just before dawn, wakes slower, deeper, like they've been gone longer than they should have been. Elson calls it threshold time, says it's when the world holds its breath, just long enough for something to cross from one side to the other. Dane, the self-appointed archivist, keeps a record of tower dreams, visions that occur only when sleepers are within a certain radius of that stopped clock. They're rarely about clocks. More often they involve hallways with no end, long tables set for guests who never arrive, or doors that open inward forever. One man dreamt he sat at the base of the tower reading a letter he hadn't written. The ink glowed blue. The letter ended with a name he hadn't heard in 20 years. His brother's, long gone. When he woke, the smell of wood smoke and pine lingered for hours, and a crow watched him from the windowsill all morning. Sometimes a dream returns in pieces, over days or weeks. A face one night, a sentence the next, a specific kind of wind blowing through the room. The villagers call this dream unfolding, and they treat it like a long conversation. You don't rush it. You don't force interpretation. You write down what arrives and leave space for what hasn't. Branwen has a stack of unfinished dreams bundled with string, each marked with a small red dot where the story paused. Every month, she adds to them. She's waiting, she says, for one to finish itself. The dream will know when I'm ready. They always do. Crimp the dog has taken to circling people who are about to have meaningful dreams. No one taught him. He simply walks slow, 3 full loops around the person, then curls up nearby. Brina says the loops are like sealing wax on a letter. Osric thinks it's just old instinct. Either way, when Crimp circles you, you're expected to be careful with your sleep. You tie a red thread around your bedpost. You thank the silence before it thickens. You prepare for whatever's coming, whether a gift, a warning, or something that's been looking for you for years. The village children play a game they call Ghost Map, where one child leads with eyes closed while the others whisper directions. They play it only at dusk, and only on the path near the hazel grove. The winner isn't who walks the farthest or the fastest, it's who remembers their dream that night most clearly. One girl claims she saw herself leading the game in her dream before it happened. Another said he saw the grove from above, from the eyes of a bird. No one ever cheats. Even at that age, they know dreams aren't things you bargain with lightly. Elson's root tongue project has become more elaborate. She's begun speaking the phrases aloud into jars of honey, then sealing them. She believes dreams can ferment in sweetness. That language grows more truthful when mixed with something made from bees and bloom. She gifted Marta a jar last week, whispering to remember forward. Marta hasn't opened it, but she holds it sometimes, especially before sleep. I asked if she's heard anything. She said, "Not yet, but the jar feels heavier on some days than others," which in Elderlin counts as communication. Some dreams are claimed to be contagious. A baker dreamed of falling endlessly through a room with no floor. The next day, 3 people reported the same dream, each from a different vantage point. One falling, one watching, one waiting at the bottom. The bakery closed for 2 days, just in case. When it reopened, all the bread had spirals carved into the crusts, and the air smelled faintly of salt. People still bought it. Some even asked for the falling dream on purpose. They said it helped them let go of something they didn't have words for. A kind of emotional exhale. Forestieri C. In the colder months, the dreams lean quieter. Not darker, just hushed. Softer edges. Fewer voices. More texture. Elsith refers to them as wool dreams, warm, weighty, slightly itchy around the edges. They tend to center on familiar places made unfamiliar, your own home with one too many doors, your garden overgrown with trees that remember you. You wake from them with the feeling that something moved inside your coat while you slept. You check your pockets, your boots, the window latch. Nothing's changed, not visibly, but you light a second candle anyway, just in case something came in to stay. Dreaming in Elderlin has never been a solitary act. Even when you sleep alone, your dream is part of a wider weave. That's why people hum when passing others at dusk. Not a song, just a note. A reminder that dreaming is communal, that what you carry into sleep might brush against someone else's dream midnight, tangle for a moment, then part again. The hum is a kindness, a warning, a blessing, and it's understood by all. Even the birds go quiet when the humming begins. Jun's experiments with dreaming continue. She's begun writing down other people's dreams, using a blend of soot, rosemary oil, and a tincture of poppy milk. The resulting ink shimmers when wet and dries with a faint floral scent. She claims dreams written this way become easier to reread. They don't fade, she said. They settle. One parchment glowed faintly in the moonlight. When read aloud, it made a baby stop crying instantly and an old man fall asleep mid-sentence. She's cautious now. Doesn't write every dream. Only the ones that ask to be remembered. Those, she says, carry themselves. And as the hour turns and the last light folds into night, Elderlin once again prepares for sleep. A final log tossed into the hearth. A page turned. A name whispered to the ceiling. Just in case the dreaming world is listening. Sleep here is not escape. It's engagement. A crossing. A conversation that continues long after the eyes close. The village hums, barely audible. A song only dreams know the words to. And in that quiet, dreams begin again. Not as guests, as hosts. In the grove behind the weaver's cottage stands a single tree, unlike the others. A tall, thin ash with bark, pale as parchment, and leaves that rustle like whispers, even without wind. The villagers call it the drain post. You don't speak to it, you write. Small scraps of linen or paper, tied to the lowest branches with thread. Never twine. Twine offends it, apparently, though no one knows how that rule was discovered. The messages are short. Names, questions, confessions. They vanish overnight. No rustling, no fluttering, just gone. And often, a dream comes soon after. Not an answer exactly, but something shaped like one. Fen once tied a note that said only, "What do I still owe?" He dreamed of a coin too smooth to spend, being placed on his tongue by a child with no eyes. He woke with the taste of copper and the sudden need to apologize to someone he hadn't seen in years. He walked to the next village, came back 2 days later with a bruise on his cheek, and a smile that looked heavier than before. He's never said what happened, but he brings flowers to the dream post now, never ties anything, just lays them at its roots, like a thanks you don't dare speak aloud. The Reeve tells of echo dreams, not your own, not shared, not inherited, but ambient, dreams that cling to places, especially old ones, and enter you like a scent when you sleep nearby. A rusted barn, a forgotten cellar, a bend in the road where the wind shifts wrong. You don't recognize the people or the places, but the emotion is thick and familiar. Grief that isn't yours. Relief with no context. Once a traveler stayed in the village inn and dreamt of birthing a foal, though he'd never seen a horse up close. He woke with straw in his boots and a sore back, didn't stay for breakfast, just nodded at the stable on his way out and left a coin behind. Elson's been keeping a dream jar, a clear vessel filled not with paper or herbs, but sound. She sings into it each morning, a note pulled from whatever she dreamed, sometimes sharp, sometimes soft, always brief. She seals the jar and places it with the others on a shelf high above her bed. When the moon is new, she uncorks one at random and lets the note out. You don't hear it exactly, but you feel it. The floor changes. The shadows move. Crimp whines. Once the jar let out a note that made every lantern in the room flicker blue. Elson lit a candle after that and whispered, "Not that one again." Children in Elderland play a different kind of lullaby game. One hums a tune, the others lie still, eyes closed, and try to dream before the song ends. Most fall into a light doze. One or two twitch, mutter, wake with wide eyes. They don't share what they saw. It's not part of the game. But afterward they draw symbols in the dirt. The same shapes appear again and again. A spiral inside a square, a pair of wings made of keys, a single line that curves once like a hook. The adults have stopped asking about them. Marta keeps a notebook of the symbols, but she never writes the same one twice. Osric says there's a kind of dream where you bargain. Not nightmares, not desires, transactions. You give something in the dream, and you wake with something new. Clarity, memory, pain moved slightly off-center. The cost is never clear. Sometimes it's a tooth you didn't notice gone. Sometimes it's forgetting the name of your first teacher. People approach these dreams carefully. You're supposed to leave your shoes pointing north before bed. You're supposed to sleep with something borrowed under your pillow. And if you wake with your left hand numb, you're not to speak until midday, not even to say hello. One of the oddest stories comes from the miller's apprentice, who dreamed he was a bell, not holding one, not hearing one, being one. He said he could feel sound moving through him, breaking apart and reforming, echoing back with meaning he couldn't understand. When he woke, he wept. Not from sadness, he said, but because for the first time he'd truly felt heard. Since then, he rings the mill bell every Thursday at dusk. Even when there's no announcement to make, people come out to listen. Not out of curiosity, out of respect. A kind of communal remembering, a tribute to resonance. Marta says some dreams are seeded by others. You speak with someone, hear about their strange sleep, and that night something similar finds its way into your own. Not the same, never exactly, but close enough that your bones recognize the shape. That's why we speak carefully about our dreams here. That's why people end dream stories with, "May this one not follow." Net tells his dreams into a bowl of water and pours it into the earth. Branwen bakes hers into bread and eats them, claiming if they're digested they can't escape. Elson writes hers on salt and lets the rain carry them away. Everyone finds a method. There's an old superstition about waking into a dream, not lucid dreaming, not that gentle steering of sleep, but a full inversion. You think you've woken, you move through your morning, and then something happens. A word out of place, a door that shouldn't be there, the sound of your name said backwards. Then you really wake up. People here call them second starts. They're rare, and never spoken of immediately. You're supposed to wash your hands, sit by the hearth, and say a blessing to the floorboards. Only then can you tell someone. Only then do the dream's teeth unclench. The chapel has a tapestry no one remembers hanging, woven from wool, stitched with thread that shimmers in candlelight. It depicts a sleeping figure in a boat, surrounded by stars with eyes. No one knows who made it. The thread doesn't match anything from the Weaver's Guild, and the colors shift depending on the time of day. At dawn, it's gold. By moonrise, violet. During storms, it fades entirely. People sit beneath it when they're having trouble sleeping. Just for a moment. Just to be near something that remembers how to rest. And so, the night deepens once more over Elderlin. Windows blink shut. The wind quiets. The sky folds in, not heavily, but with the tenderness of a story being retold one last time. The villagers settle, not with fear or resistance, but with the familiar hush of a place that understands dreaming as a kind of return. Lamps dim, breath slows, and the dreams slip in like old friends coming in from the cold, uninvited, but always welcome. The forge dreams differently than the rest of Elderlin. Not a person's forge. The forge, Tharn's forge. The one set into the side of the old hill, stone-lined and soot-stained, with tools that seem older than the village itself. At night, long after the coals cool, the air inside thickens. Not with smoke, something subtler. A presence, almost. Tharn doesn't speak much about it, but once he admitted to hearing breathing in the early hours. Not his own. Not close. Deep and slow like the earth itself drawing breath. Sometimes the anvils are warm in the morning. Once a hammer moved from its peg to the workbench overnight. When asked why, Tharn only said, "Something's trying to shape what we forget." He's not the only one who hears things. Several of the younger apprentices, those brave enough to sleep in the loft above the forge, have spoken of voice dreams. Not dreams with voices. Dreams that are voices, just sound in the dark, like being read to by a fire that hasn't yet been lit. They wake up knowing things. How to hold metal just so, which alloy sings best under pressure. One boy claimed to dream in sparks, flashes of understanding, brief and bright, that vanished by breakfast. The villagers don't push for explanations. They just nod, buy their tools, and pay a little extra when the balance is too perfect. Jun believes the forge dreams because fire remembers that heat keeps more than warmth. It holds echoes. The sound of sorrow sung into iron, the fear baked into hinges, the joy welded into wedding rings. When she speaks of it, her voice gets quiet. "We don't work metal," she says. "We awaken it." She once pressed a cooled horseshoe to her temple, and claimed to see a gallop across snow, a rider laughing, a fall that wasn't fatal but nearly. She gave the horseshoe away to a stranger passing through, said it belonged somewhere else now. That night, the stranger slept under a tree and didn't move once. Woke up crying. Dreams have seasons, they say, but there are also temperatures. Hot dreams, cold dreams, damp dreams that stick to you. Fen once charted his dreams using a scale he made up, scorched, warm, tepid, frostbitten. "It's not about content," he explained. "It's how the dream leaves you, what temperature your soul feels when you wake. Most dreams fall somewhere in the middle, but every now and then someone wakes shivering, drenched in sweat despite the cold, or they complain of dry throats after a dream that had no sun. These extremes are watched closely. Marta checks their eyes, their nails. Dreams that run too hot or too cold tend to carry messages meant for more than the dreamer. There's an abandoned rowboat at the edge of the old lake, half sunk and covered in moss. No one moves it. It's been there longer than most can remember. People call it the resting boat. No one's ever seen anyone sit in it. But strange things happen when you sleep nearby. You dream of travel, of crossing, of long, slow journeys through fog. Osric dreamt of ferrying someone across a silver river. When he woke, there was sand in his boots, and an unfamiliar coin in his palm. He keeps the coin in his pocket now, touches it when the sky turns the color of forgetting. Some dreams blur the line between body and thought. The villagers call them hollowings, dreams where you become something else entirely. A tree, a mirror, a gust of wind over wheat. These dreams don't come often, and they tend to leave the dreamer quiet for a day or two after. Brina once dreamed she was a well, filled not with water but memories. People came to draw from her, and she let them. When she woke, her voice was hoarse, and her hands trembled like she'd lifted buckets all night. Morta brewed her tea with pine needles and said, "You were useful. That's a weight." In certain families, dreaming is treated like inheritance. Stories passed down say that great-grandmothers had visions of floods, and now the daughters dream only in rain. That an old uncle dreamed of wolves, and now every boy born since wakes howling once before they're 10. There's no pattern, only reverence. People sleep with heirlooms beneath their pillows. Not for protection, for connection. A comb, a button, a scrap of cloth once worn during a particularly strange night. The dreams that come after are rarely simple, but they carry fingerprints, echoes, familiar voices in unfamiliar skies. The library, if you can call one cupboard of old texts a library, contains a book bound in cracked red leather with no title. Inside are dream descriptions written in 3 different hands, spanning over 100 years. The entries are unnumbered, unmarked, and undated. They simply are. No one knows who began it, but villagers still add to it now and then, usually anonymously. One entry reads, "I became a door. People passed through me into versions of themselves they feared." Another says, "A garden of mouths. Each asked a question I didn't want to hear." The book hums faintly on humid days. Not a sound. A vibration, like it's remembering too. Elson swears dreams cluster around certain types of music. Not melodies, not tunes, but tones. She's begun testing it with a hand-cranked music box, each cylinder carved differently. One summons dreams of glass cities. Another, long corridors filled with paper. She catalogs them meticulously. She believes the right sequence could lead someone to a specific dream on purpose. "You could send someone somewhere," she said once, eyes distant. "Find them in the same place again, over and over." I asked if she'd ever done it. She just smiled and wound the music box. It played 3 notes before stopping itself. In the last few years, some villagers have reported what they call lingering dreams, ones that don't end when you wake. Not in memory, but in behavior. You carry yourself differently. Speak with a cadence, not your own. Look at the moon as if it owes you something. Most people shake it off by midday, but sometimes it takes longer. Elsith once dreamed she was a watchtower. For 3 days, she stood at windows, unmoving, alert. On the 4th day, she blinked hard and muttered, "He's safe now." No one asked who. Some truths don't travel well in daylight. And so Elderlin sighs once more into dusk. Doors are latched. Lamps flicker like shy thoughts. Tea cools beside beds where the pillows have already learned what dreams are due. The forge dims, the field still, and the dreams stir like coals beneath ash. They are coming, not as warnings, not as prophecies, but as old friends with new stories. The village is ready. The night is listening. There's a window in Elderlin that looks inward, not metaphorically. A literal glass-paned window built into the outer wall of the weaver's old shed, facing not out to the village but into the wall behind it, stone on stone. Nothing but darkness if you peer close. But if you sleep near it, leaned against the wall, say, or curled beside the doorway, you dream of places that seem built from your own breath, rooms you've never entered but instinctively know. Marta calls it the inward eye, says it reveals not what you hide but what hides in you. Osric boarded it up once, worried about the children. The boards fell by morning, undisturbed. He stopped trying. A girl named Lyra once pressed her hand against that window and whispered, "Show me what I lost." That night, she dreamed of a forest grown from memory. Each tree a different day, some crooked, some bright with bells. She walked until she found one wrapped in a scarf she recognized. When she woke, she had splinters in her palm and a name on her lips she hadn't spoken since she was small. She didn't tell anyone what it meant, but she left a bowl of milk and honey by the window that evening, and it was empty by sunrise. In Elderland they say if you leave a door cracked while you sleep, dreams will knock. Just once. A polite rapping, almost hesitant. You won't hear it with your ears, but you'll feel it in the skin of your arms, the rise of your breath, the way your heart shifts slightly in its rhythm. If you acknowledge it, even just with a murmur or a turning in your sleep, the dream enters. Those who wake afterward often report dreams layered like songs, threads of other people's thoughts woven through their own. Sometimes it's peaceful. Sometimes it leaves a shadow on the floor shaped like a question. Net keeps a dream terrarium in the corner of his home. A glass box filled with soil, a pebble from the river, a feather he found in the chapel, and a single leaf that never browns. He doesn't water it, he just opens the lid every morning and breathes into it, then closes it again. He claims it catches runoff, the excess bits of dreaming that would otherwise drift off and dissolve. Once it bloomed, tiny white flowers shaped like keys. He touched one and dreamed of opening a door in a house he'd never seen. Behind the door himself, asleep, holding a lantern. He hasn't opened the terrarium since. Brina tells a story about her grandmother, who claimed to sleepwalk into dreams, not in her mind, in her body. She'd rise in the night, eyes open but empty, and act out dreams like theater, drawing constellations in flower across the floor, speaking names in languages no one recognized. Once she stood perfectly still for 6 hours beside the fireplace, then said, "They won't knock tonight," and sat back down like nothing had happened. The villagers didn't fear her. They salted her windows and left her tea on the sill. When she passed, they buried her with her slippers on, just in case her dreams needed company. There's a belief here that mirrors collect dreams, not show them, hold them. Every few months, villagers take their mirrors into the sunlight and breathe onto them, watching the fog curl and disappear. If the fog fades too slowly, it's said the mirror is full. You're supposed to bury it under moonlight and replace it. Marta does this religiously. She has no mirrors in her home more than a year old. She says old reflections start speaking without permission. She once caught a glimpse of herself smiling after she'd already turned away. The mirror cracked on its own. No one was surprised. Some dreams arrive in pieces, not over time, but all at once. You wake up with 5 minutes of something clear, sharp, detailed, and then static. A blankness. A curtain drawn. Villagers call it the cut. They say something stepped in, not to harm, just to edit. Jun claims these dreams mean you were seen by something else. Not watched. Seen. She advises steeping mullein in fennel and drinking it slowly before sleep. It won't stop the edit, she says, but it might let you watch the hand that holds the knife. No one quite knows if she's being metaphorical. No one really wants to. The blacksmith's boy, Darnell, had a dream that left behind a scar, not an emotional one, a real visible mark across his forearm, shaped like an open eye. He swears he never fell, never burned himself. He dreamt he was being watched by something that blinked once every 100 years. When he woke, his skin remembered. Tharn kissed his forehead and wrapped the arm in wool. "It's not always a warning," he said. "Sometimes it's just proof." The mark faded after 3 weeks. The memory didn't. Elson keeps a small bell by her bedside, tied with a ribbon the color of ash. She rings it once when she wakes. Every morning, says it's a way to let the dreams know she made it back, that she remembers, that she noticed. She teaches others to do the same, though some use different tools. A knock on the headboard, a breath through the teeth, a whispered word. Not thank you, not goodbye, just here. a kind of spiritual check-in, like announcing yourself at a door that isn't always open. There's a valley north of Elderlin where the grass grows wrong. It tilts uphill. Though the land itself is flat, no one lives there, but some go there to sleep. On dare, on instinct, on grief. Dreams there are rarely visual. They're felt. Tastes, textures, pulses in the bone. One woman dreamt of her mother's laugh, but couldn't recall the sound. Only the warmth it left in her stomach. Another man dreamt of drowning in milk. He's lactose intolerant, and hasn't touched cheese since. The village lets the valley be. You don't name what doesn't want to stay still. And so, the lamps dim once again. The village exhales through windows left slightly ajar. Crimp circles his chosen stoop and sighs into stillness. Behind shutters and under quilts, the people of Elderlin slip into sleep, not because the day is done, but because the night has asked so sweetly. The dreams gather, waiting in corners, peeking over bed frames, curling like smoke through the rafters. They do not rush. They never do. They arrive exactly when they mean to. In Elderlin, there's a book that no one opens unless they're ready to forget something. It's kept behind the chapel altar in a wooden case tied with red ribbon. No lock, just ribbon. That's enough. The book is called The Elsewhere Ledger. Every page contains a dream someone wished to lose, written not in ink, but in mixtures, ashes and berry pulp, soot and tears. The words blur slightly over time, as if they're trying to dissolve. You don't read from it. You write once, then walk away. If done properly, the dream begins to fade from your memory, slowly, kindly, like fog receding. But if you try to remember what you wrote, well, that's how people lose names. Or Thursdays. Brina has used it twice. Once after a dream that showed her a version of her own death, so gentle she couldn't stop wanting it. Once after dreaming of her sister, speaking a truth that could never be unsaid. She says the second time was harder, not the forgetting, the letting go of knowing. It's different. You never forget the feel of the dream, she told me. Just the shape of it, the weight. You remember you carried something, but not what it was made of. She visits the chapel sometimes, just to sit near the ledger, not to write, to acknowledge the space where something used to live. There's a song that's only sung once a year, at dusk on the third night after the first frost. It's not written down. It's passed from one singer to the next, a kind of lullaby woven from half-sleep and half-truths. They call it the Dreamkeeper's Song. The lyrics change subtly each time. The melody wobbles. But the village listens. Everyone sits outside, lanterns unlit, heads bowed like trees in soft wind. It's not performance. It's invitation. After the song ends, people don't speak for a while. The silence feels sacred, like something's walking through it, checking who's ready. Sindra says the song creates a net, a gentle one, thin and glowing. That for one night a year the village is wrapped in something softer than fate. That dreams that arrive during the song sleep deeper, echo longer, mean more. No one dreams of monsters that night. No one wakes screaming. Some report seeing the same golden staircase, the same orchard under starlight, the same man who always walks away before you reach him. The song fades by morning, but its warmth lingers, like a coat left by a friend you haven't met yet. Net has started carving his dreams into stone. Not words, not pictures, just patterns. Spirals, ridges, little notches that mean the sound of laughter from behind a locked door or the weight of a letter never sent. He lines them along the path by the river, doesn't explain them, just hums while he places them, palms touching each one before he walks away. Children run their hands over them, sometimes stop mid-sentence, then nod solemnly and keep walking. The stones hum after rain, quiet, like memory, like something deciding whether or not to stay. There's a superstition that if 3 people dream the same symbol within a week, you must paint it onto the village gate. No one remembers why. It's just done. Last spring, it was a birdcage with the door open, and a single feather falling. The year before, a crooked tower made of ladders. This week, it's a hand holding a key shaped like a question mark. No one knows what it means, and no one's trying too hard to find out. Meaning will reveal itself, or it won't. The gate wears the symbol like a badge. No one wipes it off, even when the rains come hard. Some dreams come with instructions. You wake up knowing exactly what you're meant to do. Bake a certain loaf, walk to a specific tree, speak a sentence you didn't know you knew. These are called urgings. You don't argue with them. You don't delay. You follow. Marta says an urging is like receiving a letter from the version of you that lives 1 week ahead. Trust the handwriting, she tells people, even when you don't recognize it yet. Last month, a boy woke and immediately swept every room in his house. That evening, a fire caught in the chimney and burned itself out in the clean ash pan. He never told anyone, but he started sleeping with a broom near his bed. Jun's newest discovery is dream binding. She's experimenting with ways to connect two dreams on purpose, not sharing but syncing. She calls it sending echoes across the dark. She uses threads soaked in rose water, braided with copper filaments, and tucked under the pillow. If two people sleep with the same braid beneath them, their dreams sometimes hum in parallel. Similar rooms, same weather, overlapping colors. Once, Elson and Osric both dreamed of a staircase that turned into a river. Neither could remember what they said to each other in the dream, but they both woke with wet feet and the scent of mint on their breath. Dreams have shadows, Elsa says. Not bad dreams, just pieces that remain after the main vision fades. Shapes that linger, moods that hang heavy like dust. She calls them after shapes. You can walk through one and feel your skin goose prickle, your breath go quiet. They're not dangerous, just stubborn. Net draws them in chalk on his floor before sweeping. You clean the soul like you clean the hearth, he says, often and without complaint. If your home feels off after a dream, you open every door and window, even if it's snowing. Let the aftershape out. Thank it for whatever it was trying to hold. Some people speak languages in dreams they've never known, not old tongues. Dreams speak. Elson believes it's not speech at all, but emotion made sound. You don't understand it here, she said once, tapping her head. You understand it here, tapping her chest. Marta once dreamed of her brother telling her a story in that language. She didn't catch a single word, but she woke knowing he forgave her. He died 6 years earlier. She wept for 2 days, not from grief, but from the strange kindness of being understood without having to explain. And once more, the moon climbs over Elderlin like a lantern hung by someone with care. Shadows stretch softly. Breath slows behind shuttered windows. The dreams come quiet tonight, not for lack of meaning, but because listening has become the prayer. The village does not dream out of habit, it dreams because the night demands it. And Elderlin, ever obedient, ever wise, answers with closed eyes and open hearts. There's a tiny, irregular pond behind the tannery where frogs gather to sing only during certain dreams. Not anyone's in particular, certain dreams. The villagers say you'll know it when you hear it. Not a croak, not a call, but something close to a chant. Low, rhythmic, half lullaby and half warning. No one's sure what triggers it. It doesn't coincide with the moon or weather or even whose turn it is to leave their boots outside. The frogs sing when a dream needs echoing. When something dreamt by one person needs to be heard by others, without sharing words, without breaking the skin of sleep. The sound carries through the village like a hush made musical. It never lasts more than a few minutes. Jun recorded the frogs once, played it back the next morning, expecting static. What she heard instead was her own voice whispering a name she'd never said aloud. She didn't play the recording again. She buried the wax cylinder under the old pine near the forge and left a piece of bread beside it. For the listener, she said. No one asked which listener she meant. Not all answers require chasing. Some are better left where they hum. Sindra says certain dreams don't want to be remembered. Not in the terrifying way, more in the protective sense. Like a door that closes itself softly behind you. She calls them cloak dreams. Dreams that wrap around you like fog, deliver something necessary, then erase their own footsteps. You wake knowing you've changed, but not how. You catch your reflection doing something slightly unfamiliar. You answer a question with a certainty that doesn't belong to you. And when you try to describe what you dreamed, your mouth fills with silence shaped like a secret. The innkeeper, Beld, dreams rarely. When he does, it's usually numbers, door counts, coin tallies, quantities of barley. But once, years ago, he dreamt of a hallway that grew longer the closer he walked to it. No turns, no doors, just a hallway, and the slow, steady creak of floorboards aging beneath him. He's never had the dream again, but he rebuilt the back hallway of the inn to be slightly off-kilter, longer than it looks, dimmer than it should be. Travelers often pause there, mid-step, and say things like, "I just remembered a dream from when I was 7," or "That smell, what is that?" He always smiles and says, "Just the floor stretching its memory." Dreams sometimes leave objects behind. Not physical ones, at least not at first, but you'll wake with the feeling of an item, something once held, once lost, once carried in a pocket long gone. It clings to your hand, your shoulder, your chest. Some people make drawings of the thing they felt. Others sculpt it from clay. Elsith has a whole shelf of dream objects rendered into waking life. Hooks with no ends, keys with no teeth, cups with unreadable inscriptions along the rim. When asked what they're for, she shrugs and says, "I think they remember for us, just in case we forget who we're becoming." There's a wind that moves differently when certain people are dreaming, a sharper rustle in the leaves, a chill that snakes through open shutters no matter how tightly they're latched. Branwen says it's the dreaming world sniffing the air for readiness, that when a dream begins to rise, it tests the village first, checks who's listening, who's too tightly coiled, who's willing to be turned inside out if asked. On those nights, the dogs bark once and stop. The crows disappear. The bells in the chapel chime with no hands. If it's your dream that's coming, you'll feel it in your teeth. Children are told never to promise anything to a dream, not even in jest, not even if it asks kindly. The rule is simple. Dreams don't forget. You might, but they won't. There's a story of a girl who swore in a dream to protect something. She didn't remember what. When she grew older, she found herself unable to walk past a certain tree without crying. Couldn't say why. Couldn't explain why her hands shook whenever she heard bells underwater. Eventually she returned to the tree, sat down and waited. The dream came back that night. Dari bulad, isak sing drysav endad. She wouldn't say what it told her, but in the morning the shaking stopped. The miller Tom speaks of dream guests, people he meets only while dreaming, strangers but familiar. One woman always smells of thyme and ink. Another man always whistles through his teeth and gives bad advice about boats. Tom's kept track. They come and go, but sometimes reappear after years of absence, exactly as they were. Like they live somewhere else, he said. And I'm just the place they visit when their sky gets too quiet. He's written short notes to them, left beside his pillow. Once he woke to find a stone where the note had been, smooth, warm, cracked down the middle. Some nights, the village dreams together, not in shared scenes, but in harmonized feelings. A hush falls over the morning. People nod more than speak. Emotions feel aligned like tides pulled by the same moon. No one orchestrates it. It simply happens. The baker makes loaves shaped like open hands. The reeve doesn't open the office. Net sweeps the streets with extra care. On those days you feel as though you've all just returned from the same long journey, and no one wants to break the spell of shared silence too soon. There's a clock in the schoolhouse that ticks only when someone is dreaming vividly within 30 feet. No one fixed it that way. It simply behaves that way. During lessons it's often quiet. But when someone naps in the corner or nods off during history, it starts up soft and regular. The children think of it as a lullaby. The teacher listens for it too. She says if it ticks hard enough, you let the child sleep, even if the lesson is important. They're learning something truer, she says, and not all knowledge is ours to give. And so, under a velvet sky filled with slow stars and deeper questions, Elderlin turns once more toward sleep. The houses lean inward, as if huddling around the fire of shared dreaming. The night breathes, long and low, and the village breathes with it. No fanfare, no ceremony, just stillness, and the sound of thought folding into story. The dreams rise not to teach or test, but to be known. And Elderlin, faithful as ever, listens with closed eyes and an open heart. There's a stretch of cobblestone on the main road that never dries properly. Rain evaporates elsewhere, but this patch stays damp, as if it remembers the water longer than the rest. Marta calls it the soaking stone. The superstition goes that if you walk over it while thinking of someone, they'll dream of you that night, though never quite as you are. The dream version of you might be taller, or humming, or made of bees, but it will be you, and they will know. Elson tested it once, thought of a friend who'd moved away years before. That night she dreamed of herself as a bird on his windowsill. He wrote her a letter 2 weeks later, said he'd had the strangest dream. Sindra believes the stone is more than superstition, that it marks a leak between waking and dreaming, a soft spot where emotion seeps through. She sits there sometimes with a folded scrap of fabric, speaking names into her lap. Not requests, not pleas, just names. She says it's like tossing messages into a river. Sometimes the dream returns them, sometimes it swallows them whole. Either way, you've done your part. The villagers leave flowers there now, stones with initials, a piece of string. They don't explain, they don't need to. Jun has begun distilling dream dust. Not literal, of course, but her name for the fine powder she collects from beneath her pillows each morning. It's not dust, exactly, not ash. It smells faintly of lavender and iron. She thinks it's a kind of residue, leftover material from heavy dreams, like skin after a molt. She stores it in little bottles and labels them with vague descriptions. Storm forgiveness, false reunion, swan fire. When asked what she'll do with it, she shrugs. Maybe mix it into ink, maybe feed it to something, or maybe nothing. Maybe it just wants to be kept. Osric dreams of buildings that don't exist. Cathedrals made of bone and wind, houses with staircases that fold into themselves, markets where no one speaks but everyone understands. He started sketching them on scrap wood, then carving them into stone. Now he builds models. Tiny cities with no maps, no doors, just shapes and echoes. People buy them to place beside their beds, say they sleep better near them, as if proximity to another person's imagined architecture stabilizes their own. Osric keeps the original tucked in his attic. He dusts it once a week and tells it stories it already knows. Brina believes that dreams are songs missing their words, that when we dream we're catching fragments of a melody, and our mind fills in what it can. She hums while she sleeps, soft, syncopated patterns that don't match any lullaby. Her neighbors have started recording her from across the walls. One man swears her sleep humming cured his headaches. Another said it made him weep, though he didn't know why. Brina herself never remembers the tune. She just wakes up thirsty and vaguely embarrassed. But the next night the humming returns. So does the peace. Children in Elderlin sometimes describe nested dreams. A dream inside another, like a stack of boxes that open endlessly inward. One boy said he found himself holding a key in each layer, but none of them opened the next door. I was the last box, he told Marta, and I didn't want to know what was inside me. He hasn't spoken much since, but he draws now. Doors within doors, trees growing from shadows. He leaves the drawings around the village like seeds. People tuck them into books, burn them, keep them under pillows. No one throws them away. There's an odd occurrence known as mirrored dreaming. It's when two people have dreams that are opposites of one another. One running, one resting, one building, one destroying, but share the same symbols. A fox, a coin, a broken cup. It's said these dreams balance each other, like weights on a scale. When it happens, the two dreamers must walk together in silence for 1 full hour the following day. They don't speak, they don't share, they just walk. Elderlin has a special path for this worn, soft winding shielded from the sun. They call it the balancing lane. It's never empty for long. Fen has begun collecting dream oaths, promises people made while asleep and kept when they woke. He carves them into thin slivers of birch bark and strings them together like prayer beads. One says, "I will not forget her laugh." Another reads, "I will never look back at the house with the red door." They are vague but weighty. When he strings them together, he claims the dreams hum faintly like bees in a jar. He listens to them when he's unsure. Says the oaths know more than he does, that they remember what mattered when the world was more honest. Elson swears some dreams are borrowed. Not stolen, borrowed, rented, shared like a book passed hand to hand. She dreamed once of a funeral at sea, the boat made of mirrors, the mourners all wearing bells. A week later, she met a traveler who described the exact same dream, but from the point of view of the sea. They stared at each other in silence, then parted without explanation. "Not all stories need retelling," she said later. "Some just need witnesses." There's an old tale that if you leave your name on your windowsill, written backwards in salt, a dream might take it for safekeeping. Not forever, just for a while. You wake lighter, clearer, but slightly unfamiliar to yourself. People do it when they're too full, too tangled, too heavy with the weight of who they've become. The dream returns your name when it's time, usually tucked inside something else. A bird's cry, a reflection, a suddenly remembered word. Net did it last year. Says he felt like fog for 3 days, then dreamed of a stranger handing him his own name stitched into a glove. He still wears it. And now, as the sky leans into quiet blues and the shadows grow more considerate, Elderlin eases once again into night. The homes hold their breath. The dreams gather like old friends approaching a shared fire. No trumpets, no ceremony, just the sacred rhythm of breath meeting story of silence preparing to become sound. The village closes its eyes, and the dreaming begins again. There's a tree at the very edge of Elderlin, where the wild begins to hum a little louder, and the paths give up pretending to be roads. They call it the asking tree, not because it grants wishes or answers prayers, it doesn't. What it does, if you're lucky, is echo. If you sit beneath it and ask your question aloud, just once, just softly, then sleep under its branches, your dream might offer a mirror of the answer. Not the answer itself, but a version of you who already knows it. Marta says it's not about knowledge. It's about seeing yourself prepared for the knowing that's rarer. Brina once asked it, "What am I still afraid of?" She slept there with her cloak wrapped tight and one hand on the ground. She dreamed of a room with too many mirrors, each showing a version of her that wasn't quite wrong, just misplaced. She woke up breathless, shivering in sunlight. She wouldn't say what she saw, not exactly, but she walked back to the village barefoot, carrying her shoes in her hands like relics. When someone asked if the tree answered her, she said, "No, it just stopped pretending not to." Some villagers speak of return dreams, places they revisit again and again, sometimes over years, without ever choosing to. A house with red shutters and endless halls. A library where the books whisper warnings. A boat caught forever between two shores. These places age along with the dreamer. Net's return dream is a tower with no stairs. Each time he visits, he finds a new ladder, a higher window, a different sky. He keeps a sketchbook just for it. The tower hasn't let him reach the top yet. But last week he dreamed of a bird landing on the highest beam and singing his name backwards. Elson says returning dreams are not random. They're agreements, contracts made before memory. You didn't choose the place, she says, but you agreed to visit. The dream keeps its side of the bargain. Your job is to remember why you came. Some people grow frightened when the return dream starts to feel familiar, as if it's waiting, as if it's unfinished business. But others find peace in the repetition, like returning to a favorite book where the ending always stays just out of reach. There's a hill outside the village where dreams are said to thin. They call it Hollow Rise, and no one lives there. If you sleep on it, your dreams become quiet, stripped of color and sound. Only the bones of the dream remain. Skeletons of stories, fragments of faces. Marta believes it's a place for shedding, a site for leaving behind the dreams you've outgrown. People visit it when they're ready to forget a version of themselves. They wake changed. Not dramatically, just cleaner around the edges, like someone trimmed the thoughts that no longer served them. Children are warned never to lie in a dream, not because it's immoral, but because dreams notice a lie inside a dream, causes a fracture. Something tilts, breaks, shifts its gaze. If you lie too well, the dream begins to lie back, shows you a version of reality that's almost right, then twists it at the end. You wake uncertain. Things look too sharp. Your name feels borrowed. Marta calls it echo truth, when the lie follows you home and wears your coat. To rid yourself of it, you must sleep under moonlight and confess the truth aloud to something that breathes. Crimp counts, so do bees. The well in Elderlin's center is covered at night, but not to keep things out, to keep things in. It's not a deep well, barely a dozen feet, but people dream of falling into it. Not the descent, the moment just before. A sharp pause, a breath held forever. One man claimed he dreamed of a hand reaching up from the bottom, not to pull him in, but to give him something. He never said what it was, just that he hasn't dreamed since. Jun keeps a ring of salt around the well, some nights. Elsith says it hums when the village dreams too hard. There's a quiet game played by lovers in Elderlin called You First. It's not about winning, it's a pact. One partner sleeps first, and the other waits, watching. Then, once they're sure the first has drifted off, they whisper a sentence, usually a wish or a memory, and then follow them into sleep. If both remember the same image in the morning, it's considered a promise. Not legally binding, of course, just dream deep. Elson says it's more reliable than vows. Words fade, she says, but dreams leave fingerprints. Occasionally a traveler comes to Elderlin and sleeps like stone. No tossing, no sounds, no dreams they can recall. This isn't seen as failure. The villagers say some people are dream reservoirs. They absorb other people's dreams, carry them, hold them, give them a place to rest. Not everyone can bear it. It's a lonely task, but a necessary one. Brina once said, "If you find someone who doesn't dream, be kind. They might be carrying yours." The next morning, someone left a flower at the innkeeper's door. No note, just petals curled like listening ears. Sindra keeps a list of unspoken dreams. Not dreams untold, but dreams that refuse to be told. People sit across from her, open their mouths, and nothing comes out, or their voice changes, or they forget what they were saying halfway through. She records these with a single line, no detail, just the dreamer's name and a date. Her wall is covered with them. She says the dreams are still alive, just waiting for language to catch up. Until then, they remain ghosts. Helpful ones, mostly. And so the hush comes again, softer than before. The village dips its head. Crickets take over the rhythm. The last shutters close. In Elderlin, dreams are not wild things. They are citizens, trusted, known, sometimes feared, always welcomed. And as the breath of night stretches long and slow across the roofs and fields, The dreams begin to flicker awake, ready once more to do what only dreams can do. Remind us of the strange, holy shape of being human. The butcher, Rel, dreams in recipes. He doesn't cook. Not really, but his sleep is full of stews and broths and slow-turning spits. He says the dream ingredients are things that don't exist. Sun-dried laughter, salted promises, marrow of dusk. He wakes up hungry, but not for food for completion. He once tried to follow one of his dream recipes with real ingredients. The result was inedible, smelled faintly of regret and rosemary, and made Crimp howl from across the village. Still, Rel keeps a notebook beside his bed. He doesn't know what the recipes mean, but he feels better when he writes them down. Safer, like he's keeping a door closed. There's a corner of the village square that no one sweeps. Not out of laziness, out of tradition. Dust gathers there quickly, even when it doesn't elsewhere. Elson says it's a catching spot, a place where the dream world brushes the waking world a little harder. Sometimes people report losing things there, words, thoughts, a button from their coat. Sometimes they find things too. Feathers from birds no one's seen, coins too smooth to spend, stones that hum when held too long. Children play games around it, stepping just close enough to giggle, then running off before anything notices. No one tries to clean it. You don't tidy magic. Jun keeps a jar of moth wings, all of them found near sleeping bodies, never harmed, just fallen. She believes moths are drawn to dreams like bees to blossoms, that they drink from them, carry them, leave powdery traces of other people's sleep on windowsills and doorknobs. She dusts her jars carefully, naming each wing with the dream it likely came from. Apology, first snowfall, the field with no end. She burns one every new moon and whispers the word back to the night. It's not a ritual, she says. It's etiquette. Some nights, a fog rolls through Elderland that smells like stories not yet told, thick and low and humming with anticipation. People speak softly on those nights. Doors are kept ajar. Bread is left out. The dreams that follow are vivid and tangled, full of characters you almost recognize and places that feel like homes you've never lived in. Elsith says the fog is the dreaming world rehearsing, that it drifts in when it's trying out new material. Not everything we dream is meant for us, she says. Sometimes it just needs to be seen to exist. Osric has a dream once a year of the same exact day. Not his, not anyone's he knows. Just a single sunlit day in a meadow filled with bells on strings hanging from trees. He never moves in the dream, he just watches the wind ring them. He says it's the only time he feels completely still inside. No questions, no ache, just presence. When that dream comes, he cancels his work the next day and walks to the farthest edge of the fields. He listens. Sometimes if the wind's right, he hears a faint chiming. The bells aren't there, but the wind remembers. Branwyn once said that dreams are the body's way of speaking truths. The mind won't translate. That a limp in a dream means you've been favoring something too long. That running means you've said yes to too many things. That falling is simply gravity reminding you that you've forgotten how to rest. She treats dream symptoms like any other ailment. People come to her with sleep sickness, restless nights, twisted dreams, waking with other people's names in their mouths. She prescribes silence, sea salt, and once a spoon tied to a pine branch. It worked. The patient never questioned it. Children sometimes report dreaming ahead, a birthday that hasn't happened yet, a pet they don't own, a kindness no one's offered them yet. These are called before dreams. Marta writes them down and waits. When the event finally comes to pass, she lights a candle and thanks the child. You carried it early, she tells them, so the rest of us wouldn't have to worry. Some children blush, some shrug. One girl cried and said, "It was heavy." Marta made her a necklace of wooden stars. For next time, she said, so the dreams know where to land. The baker's wife, Meryl, has dreams she can't wake from unless someone speaks her name aloud. She tells her partner each night, "Say it if the candles flicker." And sure enough, now and then they do. No wind, no draft, just the smallest shiver of flame. He leans in, says her name softly, and she breathes in like she's surfaced from deep water. She calls it her tether, says dreams try to take her too far sometimes. But as long as someone remembers to call her back, she doesn't mind. They mean well, she says. They just forget I'm not built for forever. There's a seasonal feast called Still Wake, held at midwinter, when the dreams run thick, and the nights feel older than they should. Everyone brings a dish inspired by a dream from the year. Some are simple, spiced milk, a bowl of blackberries, bread shaped like birds. Others are interpretive. One year Fen brought soup that shimmered and tasted of old music. No one could finish a full bowl. They all felt too full too quickly. It's not about the food though. It's about offering what the dreams gave, returning something to the world that the mind alone couldn't conjure. Sindra tells the young ones, when a dream doesn't end, it's because it's not yours. Dreams are meant to close, like books. Some swing shut gently, others slam, but the ones that stretch too long follow you past waking, leave you glancing at corners with unease. Those belong to someone else. You walked into the wrong house, she says. Now leave a note, close the door, and don't take anything with you. There's a song for such dreams. 4 notes, hummed quietly. Net says it clears the air like rain. Marta says it just reminds the dream you have somewhere else to be. And so Elderlin settles once again into its nightly rhythm. A few shutters creak shut. A breath catches in the chimney. The scent of salt and soot drifts faintly down cobbled lanes. Dreams wait on the edge of the village like a tide held just out of reach. Then, as always, the letting begins. The yielding, the welcome, and the dreams, gentle or not, find their way in. There's a ladder in Elderlin that leads to nowhere. It leans against the western wall of the old storehouse, too tall to be practical, too sturdy to be forgotten. No one recalls placing it there. No one moves it. At night it glows faintly, not with light, but with attention, like something watching from above. It's said that if you dream of climbing it, you'll wake with a decision made, a real one, deep in the gut, before you've consciously chosen. Marta calls it the ladder of arrival. Not all choices need thinking, she says. Some just need height. Brina once dreamed she climbed it endlessly, only to reach a platform made of books with no pages. She woke knowing she would leave her job at the tannery, though she hadn't planned to. She packed her things that same day and moved to the orchard, where she now tends trees and hums to the bees. When asked if she regrets it, she shrugs. The ladder already knew where I belonged, she says. I just hadn't looked down yet. Jun says the ladder may not be a ladder at all. She believes it's a spine, the spine of a larger dream buried beneath the village, surfacing only where it matters. Dreams have skeletons, she claims. And this one's reaching. She's tried to trace it, mapping dreams that include stairs, ascent, reaching hands. They form a pattern that curls inward like a spiral, always circling the ladder, never touching it directly. Whatever the center is, it's still dreaming. In Elderlin, there's a practice called weaving the dreamwake. It's what you do when you don't want a dream to vanish with the sun. You sit quietly at dawn before the first bird and write only what you remember in single lines. Not full sentences, just fragments. The lake was watching me. Red rope. A man with 3 shadows. You fold the page and place it beneath your pillow, not to remember but to honor the remembering. Some villagers believe it creates a safer path for the next dream, like lighting a lantern on the road home. Elson tells people to be careful with pillows. They remember, she says, more than we think. She rotates hers weekly, shakes them out under moonlight, never shares them with guests. Dreams nest in the creases. Some are helpful, soft as lullabies. Others hide like seeds, waiting for the right mind to grow in. If you sleep on someone else's pillow, you risk catching their sorrow, or worse, their certainty. Brina once used a guest pillow and dreamed of a house she couldn't leave. Woke up, unable to step outside until sundown. Elson burned the pillow. The guest never returned. There are dreams in Elderlin that speak in color. Not in scenes, not in stories, just color. Bright and full and absolute. People wake overwhelmed, crying or laughing, unable to describe what they saw. Sindra keeps jars of pigment. She's tried to match shame blue, grace gray, tender umber. She offers them during morning rituals and name days. A child was once given a pot of first breath yellow, after a particularly vivid dream left her silent for hours. She dipped her fingers in it, drew a spiral on her shirt and said, "I'm here." That was enough. Crimp, for reasons no one understands, has started sleeping in the chapel. Not every night, but often enough that no one questions it. He curls under the altar, nose tucked under his tail, and dreams deeply. People passing by sometimes hear faint murmurs, whines, barks, once a full sentence, though no one agrees on what it was. One woman claims she dreamed through Crimp one night, said she saw the village from his height, heard the wind as music, smelled everyone's feelings. When she woke, she left him a biscuit soaked in broth and whispered, "Thank you." He didn't eat it, but lay beside it all day. There's an unspoken rule in Elderlin. Never write a dream in blood. Not yours, not anyone's. It's happened before, accidentally or otherwise, and every time it's left something behind. A stain that won't scrub. A page that hums. A feeling that you're being read. Marta keeps a book wrapped in cloth and twine, locked inside a drawer with 3 keys. She won't say whose dream is inside, only that it's old and that it still dreams back. If you ask too many questions, she changes the subject. If you press, she asks you what your last dream smelled like. No one ever remembers. Sometimes the river runs backward for a few seconds before returning to its proper flow. When it does, someone in the village always dreams of a returning, a lost friend, a forgotten truth, a mistake unmade. It never lasts more than a few heartbeats, and the person always wakes with damp hair and fingers curled into fists. The Reeve records each event in a blue journal with a single word remembered. No date, no name, just the act. As if that alone is sacred enough. The school children have invented a game they call Dream Tag. It's simple. One child dreams of something, then tells the others only a riddle about it. The others try to dream it too. Whoever comes closest wins. The prize is usually a small token, a button, a ribbon, a stone shaped like a heart. But the real prize is the connection. Last week, 3 children dreamed of a wolf with wings and woke at the exact same time. They didn't say a word, just held hands and smiled, like they'd just met an old friend. And once again, Elderlin breathes out the day and leans back into its quilt of sleep. The stars gather politely above the chimney smoke. A door creaks closed. A kettle sighs, and below it all the dreams stretch their limbs and prepare their quiet entrances. They will come, careful, soft-footed, shimmering with half-meanings and full hearts. And the village, as always, will let them in. In the northern field just beyond the bramble line where crows refuse to land, there's a stone circle no one claims. It isn't marked on maps, and yet everyone knows where it is. 12 stones, uneven, some fallen, some leaning, like tired elders. No carvings, no runes, just age and silence. But on certain nights when dreams run louder than language, villagers walk there without needing to speak. They lie between the stones, stare up at the stars and listen, not for voices, but for echoes. It's said the stones remember every dream ever dreamt nearby. Not the plot, the intent. What the heart carried into sleep, what it hoped to find. Branwen calls it the listening circle. She goes when her dreams grow tangled. She brings nothing but a blanket, and a question she doesn't ask aloud. The stones never answer, not directly, but something shifts inside her after. Her feet walk differently. Her hands reach more easily. Once, she left behind a ribbon. The next time she returned, it was tied around the tallest stone, woven through with feathers. She didn't touch it. She just sat, nodded, and stayed until dawn. Some believe the dreaming world is Elderlin's oldest citizen, older than stone, older than names. That long before the village was built, before the first hearth was lit or the first path paved, the dreams were already here, waiting for someone to arrive and listen. That the cobbled streets were laid over old dream routes, and the river only flows where the dreams allowed. Marta says this is why we dream in the shapes we do. Stairs, rooms, windows. We didn't invent architecture. We remembered it. The dreaming world taught us how to build, how to belong. Elson has started telling her dreams to the bees. Not in words, just presence. She sits near the hive, eyes closed, breath steady, and lets the dreams seep out slowly like heat from a stone. She swears they listen. That on nights when she shares the most, the hive hums louder the next day. That the honey tastes a little more like memory. The villagers don't doubt her. Why would they? Bees have always known more than they're letting on, and dreams, like bees, make things that last. There are dreams that change names. Not yours, theirs. One night, a dream arrives calling itself the Garden of Second Tries. Another night, it comes back, but this time it's the house that waits without anger. You know it's the same dream even if the story shifts. The feeling doesn't. It's as if the dream is trying on different ways of being understood. Some people try to name their dreams in return. They rarely get it right, but the attempt is respected. The dreaming world, like any guest, appreciates hospitality. Fenn carved his final dream into a ring of wood from the hazel grove. Not the events, just the feeling. He said he couldn't put it into words, only curves. It was peace, he said, but not gentle. Like something that had fought very hard to stay kind. He wears it on a string around his neck. When asked about the dream now, he only says it was the last one I needed. He still dreams, of course, but not as often, not as urgently. He walks more, hums more. Once you've met the right dream, maybe the others learn to speak softer. The Reeve has a jar of soil on her desk, labeled "From the Place I Left in a Dream." She never explains it, just touches it when making difficult decisions. Some say she buried a promise there. Others say it was her name before it changed. Elderlin doesn't demand explanations. It just observes, honors, remembers. The jar stays where it is, and the village moves gently around it, like moss around a stone. Some say the village itself dreams, that the creak of the chapel wood is the groan of its sleep, that the well's reflections aren't yours, but the village remembering how you once felt, that Crimp, odd as he is not a dog at all, but the village's dreaming made flesh, snoring, circling, loyal and unknowable. When asked if this is true, Marta only smiles and says, "Why shouldn't it dream? It holds us all, night after night, and no one carries that much without needing rest." At the year's end, the villagers gather by candlelight and share one final dream. Not out loud, not in words. They sit in silence and breathe together, each person holding a dream in their mind, not their most vivid or most frightening, but their most true, the one that stayed, the one that asked them to become something new. They breathe it out like smoke, let it rise with the candle heat, and then they go home. Sleep comes quickly that night, and deeply, as if the dreaming world, satisfied, curls up beside them. And so the dreaming continues, not as escape, but as return. Not to flee the world, but to meet it from the other side. Elderlin rests. The doors close. The names are whispered one final time to the stars, and the dreams, patient, peculiar, profound, move through the village like old rivers, wearing paths into every heart, quietly, gently, without end.